Content Officer here at Brand Innovators and your host for the day. We have an amazing group of experts from all facets of this ecosystem, the brand side, the technology side, and the media side coming together to share with you today and dive into the world of TV. We have leaders from Molson Coors, Essence, MasterCard, Trade Desk, LiveRamp, Cadillac, United Health Group, Experian, Viacom CBS, Comcast, Horizon Media, Video Amp, Snowflake, Blockgraph, Magnite, Intercontinental Hotels Group, and more. As the name implies, we are going to dive into all things TV, my favorite topic, not just from the industry perspective, but as a consumer as well. As it's clear that, we're no longer in the golden age of TV, I would say not even the platinum age of TV, but in what can only be described as maybe the diamond age of TV. I'm open to other names, but whether it's traditional TV, premium cable, the plethora of new streaming services, to say that there's something for everyone out there these days is an understatement. Whether it's sports, drama, true crime, documentaries, sci-fi, mystery, superheroes, it's really never ending. And with each new investment in content, there are all the likewise technological and strategic innovations that allow all the brands and marketers, like the ones in our community and the world over, to reach those audiences and connect with them in new and impactful and ever more compelling ways. And that's going to be our focus for today's program. So with that, I would like to once again thank our wonderful partners at Dish for working on today's event and putting all this effort in to make sure that we bring you guys some really amazing insights and discussion. And we're going to kick things off today by diving into a conversation around automating and adapting to the TV buy through digital. So please help me in welcoming our first speakers of the day. We have Sean Buckley from SpotX, now part of Magnite. Ashutosh Gangwar, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, the GM of TV partnerships at Trade Desk. Nicole Kane, Director of Precision and Digital Marketing at Molson Coors. We have Rachel Pierce, Director of Global Programmatic and Data Management at IHG. And we have a duo of moderators, Dave Antonelli, Director of Sling TV at Dish Media, and Andrew Tint, the Head of Programmatic Partnerships at Dish Media. A fantastic group. We're going to kick things off on a really high note. So welcome everyone, Nicole, Rachel, Ashutosh, Sean, Dave, and Andrew. How are you guys today?
Doing great. Thanks, David.
That is wonderful. I see people are still joining in, turning on their cameras, turning on their microphones. But Dave, I will turn the virtual stage over to you and Andrew to kick things off and lead this discussion. And I don't want to eat up any more of your time. So I will be back in a little bit when you guys start winding down. The virtual stage is yours.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Great name. And thanks for the kickoff. I appreciate it. I'm David Antonelli. I'm the Director of National Sales at Sling. As David just mentioned, I'm really thrilled to be here today and kick off a really incredible lineup on the agenda of the future of TV. For this panel specifically, we're focusing on automating and adapting the TV buy through digital. We're so thankful. We had a great prep call with the crew here. We have an amazing group of panelists joining us today. And really with these true experts from both the client as well as the platform side of the business, we're going to get to dig into a lot of great topics, including how buyers are shifting to connected TV, what they still need to have optimal automation, and also finally, think about what does the future have in store, because there's a lot of exciting change out there right now that we're experiencing and part of. And these are all really near and dear topics to us at Dish Media, because we were really the founders of live OTT and dynamic ad insertion with Sling, and also as leaders in offering this live inventory programmatically for years now. We deliver over 1 billion impressions per month to over 200 networks. So for us, it's really important to have this talk and to get this feedback from the marketplace because things are changing more quickly than ever, and we really need to make sure that we get this great feedback from our clients. And our panelists are really on the forefront of all this change and looking forward to hearing what they have to say. Now that I've given you a good sense of where we're headed today, I'd like to introduce my co-moderator, Andrew Tint. He heads up our programmatic business at Sling, and then we'll welcome all of our panel members. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Excited as Dave is for this conversation today. As you mentioned, my name is Andrew Tint. I lead up a programmatic partnerships team over at Sling TV. I'm going to go around and let each panelist introduce themselves, starting with Rachel.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Rachel Pierce. I am Director of Global Programmatic and Data Management at IHG Hotels and Resorts. So for those of you who aren't familiar with IHG Hotels and Resorts, we are a global hotel company, represent 16 brands, about 6,000 destinations across the globe, most notable Holiday Inn, Intercontinental, Kimpton. My responsibilities at IHG is I lead the programmatic team, which encompasses data management, programmatic execution, as well as paid media planning. So thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it over to Nicole.
Hey everyone, I'm Nicole Kane. I lead the precision and digital marketing team at Molson Coors. Most of you probably know some of our big brands such as Miller Lite and Coors Light and a lot of the new seltzers we've been launching recently. So my role at Molson Coors is really taking the combination of our data, so collection of first party data assets, making sure we can activate those through channels like Programmatic, and then also making sure we can measure and understand them through marketing analytics, and then having the right consumer experience as our website management also sits under my remit.
Great. Well, we're lucky to have you. I'm going to pass it off now to Sean.
Thanks, Andrew. Great to be here. I'm Sean Buckley, COO at SpotX, which is now part of Magnite. For those not familiar, we build technology for media owners to manage their video advertising businesses, and I lead the commercial teams on our side.
And last but not least, Ash.
Yes, thanks, Andrew and Dave. Hi, this is Ash Gangwar. I lead our TV partnerships team at Trade Desk. For those of you guys who may not be familiar, Trade Desk is a buy-side platform. We buy advertising on a host of different channels. In my current role, I am focused on building our partnership with most of our larger networks. So happy to be here.
Thanks a lot. Great to see all these faces again. Looking forward to our discussion, and thanks for joining. So now we're going to kick off the Q&A part of our panel, and we're going to, as I framed up earlier, we're going to begin with some questions that really delve into how buyers are currently shifting to CTV. So along those lines, our first question is, how are buyers augmenting their TV buys to include CTV as well as programmatic? And let's start with Rachel.
Sure. Yeah. So we're kind of in an interesting situation because we're a hotel company. We're coming out of a big pandemic, and we haven't been really investing a lot in TV. So we're looking at the connected TV space as a way of really re-entering it as we're, rebuilding the market, rebuilding things. So we're really looking at as an opportunity to use data to get in front of the right people, and versus using TV for mass scale. So it's also an opportunity to enter smaller brands into the market that maybe didn't have larger TV budgets. So that's really what we're looking at. We're looking at the data-driven aspect of connected.
That's great. That's very interesting when you talk about rebuilding with CTV. It seems like a perfect implementation. Nicole, I'd love to hear another brand perspective on that particular question and how you see the augmentation of TV buys for CTV and programmatic.
Yeah, I think we look at it more as a complement. It's really about what screen is the audience that we want to get in front of using. And so how do we use different planning tools or data to understand their preferences? And then, adjust our budget accordingly. So it's really about that total video planning solution and making sure we're getting in front of the right people so they can have the best experience when they're engaging with the entertainment that they want to, and then being relevant for them on that screen.
That's great. That's really great. And we'll talk more about data and targeting later, and we'd love to kind of dig into that a little bit more. But now I'll open it up to either Ash or Sean. If you want to chime in from your points of view, it would be great to hear a couple platform side opinions on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, in our discussions with buyers, I think it really varies. Like in some cases, folks are looking to replace the incremental reach from the traditional TV side, with OTT. And in that case, we actually, we try to provide a translation layer so that we're presenting connected TV or OTT in a way that they're familiar with. In other cases, folks are really leaning into the unique capabilities that OTT presents. And so, in those cases, we take a more ground up approach with an OTT centric view.
Yeah, I would almost support what Sean said. I think what we are seeing in the market are two types of buyers. One is sort of like the traditional linear teams that are being charged now to buy CTV, who are very focused on sort of that incremental buying that Sean mentioned. And then there is the sort of the programmatic or digital native buyers who are taking more of an approach of, and they want to buy CTV the same way they have been buying digital forever.
Yeah, I think you guys brought up a lot of fantastic points around the nature of CTV, but I think we can agree linear TV isn't necessarily going anywhere, but its role may be shifting. So I'd love to hear, Sean, since you sort of brought it up, what role is linear TV going to play in the future of programmatic?
Yeah, I mean, I think what was interesting, certainly over the last year, our primary focus as a company has certainly been the OTT space, but we've increasingly found applications for our technology in traditional television. So this is starting in areas like set-top box video on demand, right? We've started to see inventory get activated and get monetized programmatically there. And it's moving toward more advanced applications like live linear ad replacement through stuff like Project Or. And so I think there's an exciting future there. It's going to take some time. There are a lot of challenges. There are a lot of things to figure out. It's not going to happen overnight, but I definitely think it presents a really exciting opportunity for programmatic in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ash, being the platform where buyers are executing, do you see that sort of in a similar capacity as Sean pointed out?
Yeah, and sitting in the programmatic space, this may sound self-serving, but our belief is all TV will eventually be digital and all digital will be programmatic. Are we going to get there next year? Probably not, but it's definitely seeing an evolution. And in the phase one, which was sort of almost pre-COVID, was linear was separate, digital was separate, and they kind of lived their own silos. They had their own currency, their own data, separate buyers. What we've seen sort of like what I would define as phase two is a lot of times these two worlds are trying to merge together. So there is a lot of emphasis that we are seeing right now on cross-channel packaging. So linear and digital are being sold together, and even the networks are very happy to admit that as the ratings sort of seeing the decline, digital is the way that they can keep their collective reach where they need to be to sell these packages. I think we're going to see more of this for at least this year, maybe a little bit more into leading into next year. And then the phase three, which is where I said sort of everything would be digital and programmatic, that's where we start seeing linear look very much like digital. And it should behave the same way. I think common set of metrics, currencies emerge. The two buying teams on the linear and digital side start to blend together. And at that point, shouldn't be able to tell linear to digital separately. We're already seeing a lot of technology coming in that direction, which is taking linear and saying, hey, we're going to put a standard IAB VAS tag around the linear impression and make it look like digital. I think in next 2 years, we get there completely. And a lot of it, whatever the channel is, we call it CTV.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Rachel, Nicole, you guys are going to be the ones who would have to execute these buys. I mean, do you feel similar in the role that linear is going to play in programmatic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because, we're having conversations right now, even with our agency, on who should buy CTV direct, who should buy it programmatically. We have a different kind of hybrid in-house programmatic model. So just trying to understand, as more choice comes apparent in the marketplace, what really are those best decisions and what are the pros and cons of each of those? I would assume, many people who are probably even listening to this webinar right now are facing right now, because there isn't a one size all fits approach for this.
Yeah, that is a fantastic point. It is certainly complex.
And just out of curiosity, as a follow-up to that, is that the hybrid approach? That's great to sort of hear about that happening on the client side. Is that something when you're talking to your agency that you're also hoping that sort of they will be able to accommodate? Is that because it seems like it will all start at the client level, then it will flow and I think a lot of the agencies are doing a great job of this already. And then ultimately the pipes have to be in place to accommodate. But is that something that is kind of trickling down to that agency level?
Yeah, I mean, I think in our situation, the buying side of programmatic sits outside of our agency, but we have the strategic conversations because we need to think about media holistically. So, you know, our agencies need to be partners at the table with us. They're doing our big TV buys as well. And so as you guys were just talking, as it's all integrated, you can't sit in silos. You have to be a connected team in order to really make sure you get it right. And so that's how, you know, we're all leaning in together to try and figure out the solution, as well as our programmatic partners. And, you know, we're all at the table together having those conversations.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, Rachel, do you have anything that you want to add, or should we go to the next question? I can kick the next question to you if you want.
Sure. Yeah, we can move on.
Okay. All right. So as we've discussed, you know, there's a lot of change happening around video buying and advanced TV in general. And a huge part of this is about data, as we kind of touched on earlier. But this, like the usage of data is also rapidly changing. So the question is, with the shifting nature of audience targeting, how important does deterministic first-party data become, and why?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's super important. And, you know, I can speak on behalf of IHG, and we have, you know, a really robust first party data pool with our members. And so it's been super important and will continue to be really important for us as, you know, we prepare and everybody else is preparing for the demise of the cookie and the importance of the first party. But not only is it just really important to, you know, data and targeting and making sure we're talking to our audience in the right way, it's also important for privacy. When we have our conversations with legal and privacy, and having that deterministic match is helpful for consumers that may not want to be targeted. So being able to detach that data more easily, deterministically, is something that, you know, at least the legal and privacy teams are looking for. When, you know, you're working on something that's more probabilistic, it's harder to decouple that and to, you know, give consumers the transparency and opt-in and opt-outs that they want. And then the last part that I think is really important is on the analytics front. I think that the first party data for brands will become important for analyzing performance as well, and making those connections when you know, third-party cookies are already less stable, and especially in this type of environment, that it will play a role for analytics as well.
That's great. It makes a ton of sense. Nicole, would you agree with those points, or anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, a couple extra, you know, as being in a regulated category, deterministic data also helps because we know that that consumer is over the age of 21. So, you know, that's one extra layer that I think is unique for us. You know, the other piece I think on the analytics front that I wish we could do, but we don't have in our space, but I think Rachel probably has more of, is that ability to do true closed loop measurement and really get the attribution nailed. I think you do need that one-on-one information and knowing that it is the right person because it was deterministic, I think helps from that front. And then the last piece I would just add is the more you can actually confirm who that person is, even if you're not doing one-to-one marketing, the more likelihood, if you know things about that person, you know, what their preferences are, you have a greater chance of getting the personalization right when you try to execute that type of strategy and really show a consumer that you know and care about them as an individual. And so that can, you know, obviously help lead you down that path towards brand love a little bit faster.
Absolutely. Ash, Sean, anything to add there?
Just, you know, being a company that builds technology for media owners, I mean, in the OTT space, I think there's a lot of really compelling value proposition from the supply side, and we're working closely with, you know, our platform customers to help bring that data to bear so that it's usable from an advertising perspective, but also protected and used in a way that the whether it be a media owner or a device manufacturer are comfortable with. And there are some really interesting capabilities, especially as you move into things like programmatic guaranteed, where you want to do those refinements preemptively, right before the ad requests are going out the door. I think there's real value there in terms of how publishers are enabling their data.
Yeah, I mean, what I would add is I do think that there is a tons and tons of value in first-party deterministic data. I think where we are challenged as an industry is how we leverage this data. Like when I look at the data, at least from a programmatic ecosystem perspective, the first party or publisher data is still logged in walled gardens with the publishers. The buyers have data, the sellers have data, but they don't talk to each other. And I think one of the biggest challenge that we have to solve as an industry is how do we blend those two data sets in a manner that is both privacy safe, as well as both sides feel comfortable that they are getting value from that data. I think there are solutions like Unified ID that are aiming to bridge that, but there are half a dozen more that you can point out into the industry. I think a lot of what happens in the programmatic space in next 3 years will depend on how good we get as having a common translation currency so the buy and sell side can speak effectively.
Yeah, I want to. Oops, sorry. Go on, Ash.
Go ahead.
Well, this follow up is coming to you anyway. So, I mean, you kind of brought up yourself, right? There are changes coming to the ecosystem, not just programmatically, but holistically with how we target. So in your mind, I mean, how much greater does the value of first party data, especially if you look like, to your point, like a publisher like Slings or a buyer's first party data, what's its value over the course of the next 3 years?
Yeah, so I would say this. If you look at the way sort of traditionally TV has bought and been sold, it's all been sold on context. Right now, the way a lot of times CTV is sold on audiences. And at least programmatically, it's sold as audiences. I think those two silos need to break down. It doesn't have to be either by audience or by context through the publisher. I think the maximum value comes if you can combine both of those together. So publishers, I mean, I'll be frank, publishers who are going to share most of their first party data are going to get lion's share of spend going forward. And the publishers that are not so progressive and are more concerned about, hey, where is this data going to show, what is the value, and are more protective about it, I think we'll see spend continuing to shift away from them. Because it's just the nature of programmatic. We've seen this with digital, we've seen this with mobile. Data is the fuel that charges this ecosystem. And if you keep the data behind silos, you lose value.
I mean, going over to Sean, I mean, Sean, do you feel in a sense that the opportunity that's hitting the programmatic ecosystem is a way for it to sort of shift from a more walled garden to a more open approach, in line with what Ash said, where he feels that first party data and those who are more open with it are going to see an advantage, and walled gardens are traditionally a more closed activation standpoint?
I think you're going to, I think especially some of the larger, media companies and players in the space, they're going to be measured in terms of how they bring their, and make their data available. So I don't think it's going to be some sort of wide open, hey, it's all you can eat, right? My data will be everywhere. I think they're going to be controlled in terms of how it's made available. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, it's an integral part of the value proposition for this ecosystem. So, making it available in an effective way is key for sure.
Rachel, Nicole, obviously you guys do a lot of buying with audiences. I mean, what is your approach to sort of the role data plays, especially first party data in the coming years?
Rachel, first.
Yeah, I can go. So, I mean, again, I mean, let me think. The best way that, one of the ways that we're thinking about data is with our first party data is creating a higher share of voice, a higher frequency, a higher impact. If we really know who our audience is and who's going to be most likely to be in the market to travel, we want to look big in front of those consumers and, be able to make an impact through this screen. So I think, it all comes down to reach and frequency and making an impact. And so, making sure we have a really large addressable audience that we can do that with is going to continue to be important for us.
Yeah, I think it's also about understanding how it impacts your different objectives overall. So, we can use our first party data to make sure we're speaking to the people who are currently buying our products, to make sure we're speaking to them in the right way and at the right cadence that we need to for those types of objectives that we have. But we can also use the first party data we have to make sure we're using it to help find those next drinkers who are going to come into the fold. So I think there's a lot of different ways and there's a lot of versatility in how we're thinking about that first party data. And making sure that we're using it to the best extent we can to unlock all the value. But I think one of the things Rachel was saying on reach and frequency is incredibly important. And, with the cookies going away, with scale issues, with some of these ID graphs, being able to still measure on those basic philosophies that we all know are true in media becomes really important. We're seeing challenges on getting to reach, and there's a lot in the industry on that as, some of these new opportunities come out, but also how you measure frequency. So, would love to see how we solve for those right now, because those seem to be kind of growing challenges that not everyone's talking about quite as openly, just because they're the basic principles that we all grew up on.
Great. Thank you guys for the very smart answers. Now we're going to kind of look a little bit more forward. We have been talking about the future a little bit and needs, but we really want to dig into that topic and think about, what we're doing a lot of things right as an industry. There's some challenges, but like from your perspective, Rachel, what does the market as a whole need to improve on?
Well, improvements, I think I think Ash was talking about it earlier, and it's really like the content play, because in this space, we are so focused on audience, which is absolutely important, but the matching it with the content and knowing where you're going to be in the content is definitely a big challenge, because it is a TV screen. And so everybody thinks of it as traditional TV buying, which is very different, and it can be very content directed. You can, know your schedule, know where you're going to show up. And that's just not the case with programmatic connected TV space. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to be more transparent and be able to, act more like TV. But I think that's one of the opportunities, and just, some simplification and some consolidation would be nice too.
Yeah, on the Sling side of what we do, we are transparent. I think that's a core value that we share with that perspective, and I think that it's really important because quality matters, and we're going to dig into that a little bit later. But you need to have that assurance that you're running within a great environment that, as Nicole said, matches the audience that you're trying to reach and the particular behavioral patterns of that audience as well. So Nicole, with that being said, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think another thing that would be great if we could figure out, and Ash touched on earlier, is the currency piece. I'd like to be able to really apples to apples compare the different types of video options that we have and understand who is performing better, who is delivering on our KPIs. But that's a challenge today when we can't really have the same kind of measurement, let's say on YouTube versus how we're performing on CTV. If we could get to that place, I think, it would be a really interesting conversation to see what is really that optimal mix when we think about total video planning.
Yeah, Ash, anything to add there, or Sean?
Yeah, I can build a little bit on sort of that currency. And no panel is complete unless you talk about Nielsen in TV, right? So I'll try to stay away from it. But I think for so many years, people have used Nielsen or other demos as a currency because that was the only one available. I think as a market, we need to get past it and start thinking about what is the data that's available in this new ecosystem, and how do I adjust my KPIs based on what is available, and in most cases, it's better than what was available in the linear. So I think biggest value that we can add is make this shift from old demographic-based buying to more KPI-driven buying. And that KPI may be different for different brands. It may be different for different categories and industries, but we should all figure out what that KPI is and then use that as the common currency to measure across everything. Granted, Nicole, it's not going to happen tomorrow. There are challenges And identity is one of the biggest ones that I think we need to solve before we can talk about like, hey, I want to use my own personal, my own first party data to measure everything. But that's the shift I think this industry is begging for, is towards a more outcomes or KPI driven world where we can buy better.
Absolutely. Sean, anything to add there?
Yeah, I certainly agree with what's been said, but from our side of the fence, maybe a different angle. We're really focused on the podded ad experience. And so in a world where you have audience-driven buying, contextual buying, traditional sort of transaction models, automated transaction models, how do you bring all that together in a way that honors sort of the necessary rules and preserves a high-quality user experience? It seems fairly straightforward and certainly annoying when you're a consumer, watching and experiencing a bad podded ad experience, but it's quite complicated to really architect it properly in the industry. So it's a big focus of ours.
Great, thank you guys.
I remember when I started at SpotX 6 years ago now, right? CTV was just starting off, and it's obviously grown a lot, both in quality and in terms of scale and in terms of buyer interest. But the fact remains, which Rachel pointed out, that there is still sometimes a large gap within transparency. And so I'm curious to hear your guys, like, where does the market still need to improve as it relates to transparency within the OTT ecosystem, considering how much of a lift it's gone from buyers? Ash, if you wouldn't mind kicking it off there.
When you refer to transparency, you mean the sort of the contextual signals that we see through it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be any number of things, right? I mean, I think right now there's not a standardization of what should be sent. And the fact is, we have publishers who send just their name. We have other publishers like Sling who want to pass network and other parameters. So, the question comes up fairly often from buyers. And to be honest, to your point, I don't know if there is a way that it's been defined that works for everybody. So, sitting at the platform, you guys have the most conversations, I think, between buyers and publishers. And I think, you guys might have a unique understanding of what type of transparency does the market need to start to bring to buyers.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is definitely some basic information that right now is missing when we see impressions. And that, like, you would be surprised how many times even as basic information as network is not communicated when the supply comes our way. So I think the three sort of like the bare basics are genre, network, and whether this is a live stream. I think if you can do those three basic ones, there's tons and tons of value. And the way I think about it is we need to start with parity with linear. So if a buyer is used to getting a report from linear that gives them information about network, genre, and maybe show, I think we start with that. We start with what everybody has always had, and then we take it from there and make it even more, enhance it from there.
And I really like that live versus non-live too, like understanding that, because there's value in both and trying to understand as a buyer which environment you're in and what's working better.
And Sean, I mean, Sean,
I completely agree with that. I mean, the live versus sort of on demand is huge. And by the way, the setup behind the scenes on that stuff, right? Purchasing, someone viewing on demand content versus purchasing against a live event with 400,000 concurrent viewers is an entirely different sort of back end setup and preparation process. So I think that's big. And certainly, as you mentioned, Andrew, it's come a long way, and I think standardization is key. There are also, though, some things that revolve around, hey, the transparency that you're looking for, maybe it's show level or something like that, is not available because of the business relationship, right? Like the agreement between a programmer and a distributor. And there's also, in some cases, legal reasons why folks are hesitant to pass certain information. And so, I mean, there's complexity to it, but yeah, it's definitely vital.
I want to quickly ask a follow-up to you, Sean. We see a lot in the display world of SPO. That is a constant reference point. And in CTV, the ecosystem is not as fragmented yet, or we hope. So I'd love to understand from you, I mean, how important is it for OTT providers, DSPs, publishers, SSPs to educate the buyers on sort of what that supply path actually looks like versus what they may be used to along other lines of businesses?
Yeah, it's like the biggest area of education, I would say for us, right now is the concept of how inventory splits and inventory rights work in OTT, the different cohorts of streaming services, whether you're talking about the device manufacturers, the virtual MVPDs, the programmers and broadcasters themselves, a high level understanding of, okay, this is how inventory splits work. This is who gets sort of what. This is a general idea of the volume of inventory share that goes here versus there. And also as a next level to that, here's a high level understanding of like the type of capabilities that you can expect, whether it's going to be more of an audience driven sales proposition across a broad spectrum of programmers, or it's going to be more of a deep dive into more specific content targeting and that's available inside of one programmer's portfolio. Those inventory rights and where you buy have a big impact on the capabilities that are available. So that's a big part of the education that we're working on with the industry.
One thing that when we're thinking about education, one thing that we touched on this earlier, but when we're thinking about, staying on top of all of these new options out there, especially on your side of the business, Rachel and Nicole, when you're trying to keep tabs on all of the options, whether it's live or it's not, you just having a finger on the pulse for quality, as you mentioned earlier, seems to be a really important thing to have a handle on. How do you go about that? How do you account and plan for quality, and especially with all the new options that are out there seemingly every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really difficult because there are a lot of quality placements or apps out there, but they might not have scale. So how do you balance quality and scale? It is difficult, and everybody's viewing behavior is so personalized. I mean, we've done our own internal experiences, like within the walls of our like paid media team, and everybody uses a different device or uses different apps, and so there's no such thing as mass media consumption within the connected TV space, and it is this careful, delicate balance of scale and premium and stitching them all together. That is a new challenge.
That makes a lot of sense. Nicole, how about from your experience? Does that sound familiar to what you guys go through to figure out the quality question?
Yeah, I mean, I think the scale is a critical piece because unless you have a very large team, it's hard to sometimes look at every single new provider that's out there because they are growing so frequently. But I think the other side of it too is about just setting up a series of experiments of tests and learns to understand, some of these platforms might be really quality and they might have a higher premium price point, but you might get a stronger return out of it. And I'm okay paying a higher CPM if I can actually get a higher delivery on my KPI. So by doing some, smaller experiments, sometimes you can test into that without having to too heavily invest and get the answer you need at a faster time period also.
That makes a lot of sense. Ash, anything to add there?
Sorry, do you mind asking the question again? I kind of lost track.
It's really about quality and balancing quality with scale was brought up by Nicole and Rachel. And, I think that on your side of the business, there's, I think that is part of the pitch, right? That scale is derived from using the programmatic pipes. So I guess my question for you more specifically would be, like, how do you guide when you're working with a brand, like the two represented here? How do you go about giving them advice on how to sort through quality to make sure that they're in the right environments for their campaigns?
Yeah. Let me start by saying, I think one thing that we have done in CTV space that probably we did a terrible job when it was in digital. I think because the supply pool is limited, we've done a much better job of curating the right kind of inventory. Not saying that we have done this perfectly, but I think we've done this in CTV much better than we have done it in any other channel. So when we are talking about to a buyer, we ask them to make a balance between scale and quality in terms of how they split their budgets between private marketplaces and open market. Start with the private marketplaces, start with the deals that you have done directly. And if you are missing scale, then start mixing the open market on top of it, just for reaching the people that you haven't reached through your private marketplace deals. I think that has solved a lot of sort of anxiety that comes from, hey, I don't know where I'm buying, because if you're 80 to 90% of your budget is going in private marketplaces, you know what you're buying. And I think that's the sort of the good thing about CTV that we don't see in other places. Of course, tools like brand safety, fraud detection, they've become pretty standard. Like there is a basic level of filtering in any programmatic DSP. So we always layer that and start with it, and then you build on top of it.
Great. I believe we're pretty much out of time. I see that we're losing our rights here. So I want to make sure, do we have time for one more question? I think we have 4 more minutes. Andrew, I'll let you ask the final question.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think just to wrap it up, this is probably the year of OTT, similar to the year of viewability or the year of mobile that lasted 5 years. We are in the beginning of the second year of the year of OTT, and there's a lot to look forward to. I'd love quickly, 3 sentences or less to go around and just hear what you guys think is the future of OTT and what the actual, where does the OTT market go from here? Incredibly narrow question to answer in 2 sentences. Nicole, you unmuted, so I'm going to go with you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it continues to grow as it gains scales, it gains the identity connection points. So I think it's only up really from here.
Rachel?
Mine is more of a selfish one, like from a buyer perspective. Consolidation and simplification is where I'm hoping things go.
Makes sense to me. Ash?
I think we've done a really good job of sort of working in sort of this scatter or spot market. I think where we go from here is to crack how do we do this in forward-looking market. Because of scarcity of inventory, I think we need to figure that out quickly. Last
but not least, Sean.
Yeah, I guess to go on the consolidation model, a good week to talk about that, given some of the activity, but really going to be really interesting to watch how these media companies with these families of apps and these broad sets of assets, how they present that to consumers moving forward. So 2 to 3 years from now, if you have a company with a variety of different offerings, how do they change how that's presented to consumers? That's something that I'm super interested in terms of how that develops.
Fantastic. Well, I think first, thank you guys for being the first panel of the day. Never easy. Glad everyone was lively and talking. We really appreciate it. We really do look forward to working with you guys and working to everyone in the audience to grow the CTV business universally, to help support initiatives and to really help sort of drive the change that I know Rachel and Nicole are hoping happens in the market. They gave us a lot of ideas. So certainly I want to say thank you from Dave and I, and we look forward to really driving this future together.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, this was great, everyone. So let's give a big round of applause virtually. I'll clap on behalf of everybody on Zoom and on YouTube that you can't hear right now, but I'm sure they're cheering for you. Thank you for kicking us off on such an insightful note. This is well beyond my area of expertise, so it's always so impressive hearing you guys, talk about, the nuances of this landscape and what to expect. So thank you again for sharing with our community, and we hope to see you back on our virtual stage soon. All right. So we're going to keep the show rolling. We have our next amazing group of speakers. So let's welcome Mike O'Connor, EVP and Managing Director of Video Investment at Horizon Media, Mike Fisher, VP of Advanced TV video and Audio at Essence, and Andrew Troy, General Manager of Sales at Dish Media, for a conversation on how to drive maximum reach in today's marketplace in the ecosystem. Kind of we'll build on the last conversation. So this should be another great discussion. Mike, welcome. I see Andrew joining us. Fantastic. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. And we got Mike here. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Andrew, the virtual stage is yours. I will be back in a little bit to wrap up when you guys start winding down. But I'll turn it over. Take it away.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, David. Appreciate the warm welcome. I'm excited to be part of this overall panel. Broadly talking about reach, it's a major conversation that a lot of agencies and clients and vendors are having. But more specifically is how to drive maximum reach in today's marketplace. So really getting an agency perspective across a number of topics within that, specifically of how they're approaching the overall marketplace, what tools they're using, what's going on in today's marketplace, really from their own agency perspective. So I am joined by some great industry leaders, Mike and Mike, not to be confused with the famed Mike and Mike radio show from a few years ago on ESPN, but a much more compelling Mike and Mike of Mike O'Connor and Mike Fisher. So I'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your role at the agency.
Sure, I'll go first. Mike Fisher, I'm running advanced TV over at Essence. We're a Group M agency focused on using data to better drive outcomes for our clients. And television is a big push for us. As television is becoming more accountable, more addressable, more targetable, how do we start to take the best of what we've been doing in digital and apply it to TV while still maintaining the benefits of TV that everyone probably watching today already knows?
I'm Mike O'Connor, EVP of Video Investment at Horizon. So I lead video investment across Horizon and also Horizon Next, which is our performance marketing division.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys, for joining, and let's kick things off. So first, and I'm going to use you guys' surnames, so there's no confusion on the questions. So Mr. O'Connor, we'll start with you and Horizon. Really, what tools or platforms are you guys using to measure and maximize reach for your advertisers?
Yeah, from a planning front, we have proprietary tools that we use to look holistically across, linear and OTT. And I think they're largely Nielsen dependent. So they come with the holes that I think the industry is struggling with. But for us, reach is really a proxy for business results. So on the back end, we have a number of attribution tools that we use to measure things like sales, especially on the performance marketing side. So it's really a blend of looking at how reach impacts other factors on the back end.
Well, just a quick follow-up question. Are you guys using those tools then, or the ROI on the back end, to determine your ultimate budgets or budgets in the future?
I mean, we use the front end tools to determine how budgets should be allocated, but there's also the marriage of using those front end tools to look at kind of a zero-based plan. But we also have results and attribution data that we can use to inform those decisions. So it's really, I would say there's not one single answer, but it's a blend of a number of things.
Got it. Thanks. Turning to Group M and Mr. Fisher, trying to be proper here. We've talked a lot in recent months about how Group M is looking at reach. Can you really talk and describe how you guys are looking at reach from more of a holistic point of view in this marketplace?
Yeah, when we think about reach, we're thinking about it everywhere as something that is defined in an audience. So once a client defines their audience, and it could be a strategic media audience, it could be a goal-based audience, it could be an outcome-based audience. Our goal is to find that audience everywhere that they're watching first and foremost, so that instead of our clients having discrete budgets for linear reach, addressable reach, digital reach, OTT reach, we have in mind what we're looking to do from a campaign perspective because we know what's worked in the past. And we want to find people who are going to engage with a brand and engage with content that's brand supported in a way that mirrors what has worked in the past and reach as many households uniquely as possible in a landscape that's becoming more and more fragmented. So it's starting with the audience, then looking at linear, then looking at how we can use addressable across both linear, set-top box, and even ACR powered addressable to start to fill in any missing holes against linear reach. And then also start to look at how we can augment that with streaming, because today's modern TV viewer isn't necessarily just watching streaming or just watching linear or just watching on demand. They're watching it across all. And we need our plans to be more inventory aware and supply type aware as well.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot to juggle today. It's not when I first started in the business, you're basically planning out broadcast, prime, and cable, and other day parts within broadcast. Of course, it's definitely become a lot more complicated. I mean, so you guys are using the right tools, and you guys have the right approach. Like, what do you? I guess we've been talking a lot about this, and I know there've been a lot of panels, and folks are talking this week and a couple weeks ago during the new fronts. Like, how are you guys, and love to hear more about, I guess, how you guys are looking at today's linear marketplace. And I'll start off with O'Connor.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mike in terms of we need to look at things holistically. And I think, realistically in today's marketplace, I think diversification of media spend is super important as we think about, one, that consumer, the consumption habits of our target. So looking across linear and OTT, I think that as we think about reach expansion beyond, traditional linear TV into things like, addressable linear TV is important, but also expanding into the, OTT/CTV world, because as we think about increasing reach, that's pivotal in the process.
Well, so,
I'd agree.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I mean, he said everything that, that we as an industry are thinking about, and it's consolidation, it's uniqueness, it's thinking about, what's driving results and how people are consuming video, but not just necessarily how they're consuming or what they're consuming, but how they're consuming it as well, to find the best mix of the right type of video to maximize their ability to reach viewers.
Yeah, I think, if you think about it, it's the right thing to do from the consumer perspective, and it also helps us in the marketplace. I think that's, I'm sure we're going to get into that, but there are challenges in the marketplace right now, and I think by following the consumer, you help mitigate some of those challenges.
Yeah, I mean, one of the really interesting things that we've been thinking a little bit about is, for years as an advanced TV, across the advanced TV ecosystem, we've been talking about the importance of premium content. Premium content still is television content to most people. And I caveat it with most people because this is something that we've done a lot of thinking about. There is a entire subset of the population that is going to very quickly become a key media buying demographic that premium is user generated content on YouTube. And how do we look at that as a way to augment reach? How do we start to look at things that we as the buyers and we as an industry more broadly have thought of is not being TV, is quickly becoming TV-like objects to the next generation that we're looking to reach. And we need to be able to factor those into our thinking as well.
Yeah, it's tough. I have a couple of those generational individuals in my own household, and personalization is truly key, and how you reach them. Right?
I mean, we're just starting to get clients comfortable with the idea of YouTube being premium, and in 3 years we're gearing up for a fight to kind of move the ecosystem forward on why TikTok user-generated content may be premium for that generation. So premium is not just where it aired originally anymore. It's also now, what does your target audience that you're looking to reach think of as premium in their own life?
And to that end, I would say the same content can have a different target when you think about the different platform. I say this all the time. I've been binging Survivor with my kids for the last 6 months. And, they weren't watching necessarily, on CBS Broadcast Network, but we're watching it through Paramount Plus a ton. And, the demographic differences alone on the two platforms, it's the same content, but it's being viewed on different platforms. I think that's key to understanding as well.
And from a viewer perspective, it's the same. That's the other thing that we're thinking more about is like, we need to move more to a world where when someone's butt's on the couch, they're watching TV, no matter, how they're accessing it. We're there from a viewing perspective. We need to be there from an ad model perspective.
Where do you guys see, I guess, the balance though between linear and CTV? I know it's about following the consumer, but we still use linear TV as a very broad reach vehicle. I mean, is that still the mindset, and where you find the balance?
So yes and no. I wouldn't necessarily say that we still look to linear TV as a broad reach vehicle. I think we're now looking to linear TV plus some sort of technology layer, either set-top box addressability, ACR powered creative versioning, or anything along those lines, as a must-have as part of a linear augmentation package. We don't want to be just buying Nielsen measured reach and frequency in linear anymore. We want to be taking account, who the audience is, how they're watching, what they're watching, and use data to inform that, just the same way that we're doing it in an impression-based buy. But at the same time, we, for lack of a better word, coastal elitists in New York and San Francisco and LA have access to insanely fast broadband that people in middle America still don't. They don't have fast enough internet to stream. There is a subset of the population that doesn't stream for that reason. And linear TV is still super important to be able to reach those people, but also everybody who's not streaming. If you're looking at breakouts, there's still 4.5 hours a day or 4 hours a day of 5.5 hours a day of TV content that's happening in linear.
Yeah, it depends on who you're trying to reach, right? I mean, in terms of, just in terms of demographics, where they're going to be. So I think you can look at consumption habits and break it down to figure out what that right balance should be. Yeah. I think it should also for certain clients, and especially a lot of the D2C clients we have, we can start to break that down based on the business results that the different platforms and different channels are driving. So that's the form where you want to go when you're looking at buckets of inventory, whether that's linear and cable broken down by tier, or it's addressable, or it's OTT. You can, a lot of clients now, as we think about how the world is changing, we're able to look at what business results and what channels are driving those.
Yeah, it sounds like too, geo plays a critical role as well. I mean, Mr. Fisher, you mentioned, middle America, the coastals are probably more streaming. Coastal cities are probably more streaming, or larger cities are streaming, and folks are still watching linear TV. It sounds like geo is also a variable that is going to play a critical role in a client strategy moving forward as well.
Yep. No, I mean, I totally agree. I think, and that's one of the reasons why we're looking at, advanced technology planning tools to be able to better identify not just who we're targeting, but what we're targeting for and why we're targeting these people.
So what are you recommending to your clients? I go maybe even fast forward to 2022. I mean, we're already talking about 2022 in a broadcast year upfront sense anyway. Let's fast forward to 22 and 23. What are you recommending to your clients? I mean, you're following the consumer. What are some of the options you're recommending?
I mean, on our side, it's let's be planning and buying as close to the moment of the impression as we can. We're there today, obviously, in programmatic and digital video more broadly. But we don't want to 2 or 3 quarters out start to put together plans that commit budgets to networks to how we're going to do the buy. We want more fluidity and more flexibility in terms of how the buy gets executed. We still know who we're going to spend with, where we're going to spend it, and how we're going to. It's the how we're going to spend it we want more flexibility around, because we want to let the tools and the audience planning define how that buy happens, So like an example would be if a client says that they're looking to run a back to school campaign, driving clients online instead of in store, which hopefully, you know, this year coming up back to school is going to be all in store, but looking to drive people online, for example, maybe we shouldn't be buying a heavy linear TV plan if that's their measurement. So we want to be able to make sure that we're factoring in not just who they're looking to reach, but how they're looking to reach them, where their audience is watching, and what we can do with that impression on a measurement and attribution side.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, I think what we're preaching really is the diversification of our media spend. Really, I think somebody on the last panel said something to the effect of it's the second year of the year of OTT. I think that I think we have seen over the past year, a certain adoption of this acceptance of alternative channels, whether that's OTT. I think addressable, and I think, not to give a shameless plug to Dish, but things like your Reach Booster product that look at, frequency out to a specific target. I think, reach frequency are things that everyone's talking about in the marketplace, especially as you think about like frequency capping in OTT and things like that. I think it's really, about diversification and not just going to the kind of the same spots to deliver an overall plan and looking where your target is and how your target's reacting to those channels.
Awesome. So I know you gave me the shameless plug. Appreciate that.
I'll support the plug on my end as well.
Oh, thank you. And I guess the last question I had, and led right into that of, CTV is major conversation and following the eyeballs, as a lot of people are so eloquently putting. It isn't always just about CTV to maximize your reach. Love to hear from your perspective. And I know you just gave me the Dish Media Reach Booster one, but what are some other tools out there, or other platforms, not tools, but other platforms out there that you see as a unique vehicle that can help close the gap on reaching your audience?
Yeah, not to endorse. I'm gonna give. We're in upfronts, so we're currently negotiating a lot that I don't want to call anyone out in particular.
Be careful on the premiums.
Beyond our friends at Dish, but data-driven optimizer tools that can really think across supply types. So tools that look more holistically at available supply in the ecosystem. How do you allocate across not just a network or a screen, but all networks and all screens? Because the same way that people aren't just watching, linear TV or streaming or on demand, people aren't just sitting down and watching Disney. They're watching everything, and being able to have a plan that's aware of how that audience is watching everywhere early in the process is vital for us.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'd wholeheartedly agree. Again, it's not necessarily to plug what a network is doing, but it's about finding the most effective way to reach an audience. And I think, when you think about data optimization, whether it's across a network group or using, addressable technology, I think that's key in expanding reach.
Yeah, I mean, how do you see, and this will be my last question, I know we're closing on time, but how do you see or compare the different players out there as far as who has the best data set to make those things activate? Not necessarily vendors per se, but those that possess kind of the best sets of data. Would love to hear your perspective on that.
Which vendors out there have the best
vendors? No, not vendors, but more along the lines of like who has an advantageous position from a marketplace standpoint, who own, folks that own the data specifically.
Well, I think clients have an advantageous position in terms of their data, which I think is one of the most exciting. As I think about Horizon Next and kind of our performance division, it's really cool to see what the information brands have and how we can leverage that in the marketplace. I think to the flip side, obviously consolidation is on everyone's mind right now. I think one of the benefits to consolidation is being able to, use some of the tools that Mike was talking about and leverage it across larger portfolios, which I think can be a good thing. So, being able to tap into an audience, again, across a diverse set of content or platforms.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think the people who are in a good spot right now are the data onboarders, being able to pull in proprietary first-party data in a clean, privacy-safe way and make it actionable to the tools that we're using.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And I see David joined, because that is the buzzer.
I'm the gong. I'm the guy with the crook, right, pulling you off stage. No, this was great. I always hate cutting these short. Again, super insightful. We appreciate your time and sharing with us. So thank you, Mike and Andrew. And again, we'll have you back again soon for round 2. So we appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. So like I said, we're going to keep this show rolling. We have some amazing speakers coming up next. We have Jonathan Stewart, the Executive Vice President of TV Strategy and Currency at Video Amp. And we have our moderator, Lauren Schweitzer, the General Manager of Sales at Dish Media. And we're going to be diving into the topic of optimizing reach and efficiency in the planning process. So again, we are covering all aspects of the TV ecosystem and what goes into the investment and the buying and the planning. So we are thrilled to have Jonathan here. We are thrilled to have Lauren here. So let's give a virtual round of applause and welcome to our stage here on Zoom to Jonathan and Lauren. Welcome. How are you doing? I see both of you guys are still on mute. Oh, there you go.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hello and welcome. I know we got about 20 minutes for this one, so I will bow out. Lauren, the stage is yours.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. And hello, Jonathan. Good to see you.
Hello.
Definitely excited to be here today. We're touching on the topic of reach incrementality, which obviously we just discussed in the previous session, focusing a little bit more on the planning process. And reach incrementality, it's certainly a big buzzword these days, getting more buzz than ever. While advertisers are, tending to lean in, I'd say more largely to OTT as a means to gain reach incrementality, there really is a first step within linear that folks should be taking. And that's really to add deterministic targeting. Mike mentioned it, I wasn't gonna bring it up, but products like Reach Booster, right, from Dish Media, that can really precisely target audiences and find unique viewers that can't be reached within the traditional linear space. So we're trying to encourage partners to plan smarter and optimize allocations and really take a more data-driven approach with their planning process. So I'm sure you have a lot to say on the topic. I would love to get your perspective, but before we do that, Jonathan, would just love for you to introduce yourself to the audience. Tell everyone a little bit about your role at Video Amp.
Sure, thanks, Lauren. I'm Jonathan Stoyer. I'm now about 7 months in at Video Amp, but have been working with the company for about 4 years. My previous role was the Chief Research Officer at Omnicom Media Group, where I worked, with Video Amp as a data and a platform supplier, and with Lauren and our other friends at Dish as, a buyer, perhaps not as much as we would love to be, but of your inventory and using some of the products that we've been talking about. So, I've spent about 20 years ish in the business, just trying to make better data available. I mean, I'm a measurement guy by background, a research guy, and for a long time, the obstacle in the marketplace was there just wasn't good enough granular data for optimized TV to be a real thing. And I think now what we've seen is a combination of data from folks like Dish coming into the marketplace over the last few years, as well as the huge changes in the industry as streaming has become much more of a thing, driving everybody to both generate and use data in ways that we haven't before. So I'm excited. I like to think that I'm becoming more indispensable as things go on.
Awesome, appreciate that info. So talk to us a little bit about why reach incrementality matters so much, and how can it be achieved, in your opinion?
Sure. I mean, coming from the buy side, this is something that we were really focused on at OMG, and I think other agencies too. We just heard this on the previous discussion. There's a ton of extreme overfrequency on the, especially on the linear TV side. We did a bunch of research on that back in my prior life and found that, you know, the over delivery on linear campaigns was sometimes an issue, to the point that the additional impressions did more harm than good. You know, we called it negative reach. The idea that you're actually at a certain point, just the overfrequency is irritating people to the point that it's making them less rather than more likely to be your customer. So, you know, the question becomes, how do you intelligently use data to reduce that overfrequency, and while still spending less money, allocate that to incremental reach? And, you know, especially as linear only households are shrinking in number, and the combined linear plus streaming households are actually growing in number quickly, linear over delivery becomes the problem. And so finding out where that over delivery is happening and allocating those dollars to smarter ways to extend that reach using addressable, you know, it might mean that the raw CPMs are higher, but the effective CPMs per incremental reach point are much lower, because you're actually taking essentially found money that you were using to annoy people and using it to reach people you actually wanted to talk to in the first place. I apologize for the appearance and disappearance of my limited hair in this terrible light environment, but it's what comes with using the corporate issue back. There's not that much, but there's some.
All good. Yeah, that's definitely a very valid point. And it seems like, you know, clients on the front end are just so focused on the cost per point, but not really taking into consideration much of the back end and where that CPM really nets out to from, you know, when delivery is finalized. So that's an excellent point. Can you talk a little bit, I mean, you touched on this, but how is Video Amp specifically helping clients achieve their reach and frequency goals?
Thanks for asking. Happy to share. I mean, I think, you know, this is one of those situations where the first step's admitting you have a problem, and that's what drives buyers to Video Amp in the first place, is to just be more efficient about their investment strategies. And, you know, my personal focus is making better data available to help in the planning and the transaction and in the measurement process to do that. And that, you know, starts with our commingled TV delivery data set. It's, you know, viewership, except, you know, it's hard to know who's in front of the TV. And that lets us look at how many households are exposed to programs and ads, but also which ones. So understanding household and device level TV activity and combining that in a privacy safe manner with household characteristics and other data sets from folks like Dish to let us measure reach and frequency specifically against target audiences at a granular level, at a household level. And once you've been able to do that measurement, you can then use the delivery data to fuel better targeting, whether that's on linear, whether it's on OTT CTV, so suppressing the folks you already hit and targeting them on digitally targetable methods, or by using that same data to do a better job reaching those folks via addressable. And I know that's one of the ways we like working with y'all. You know, agencies use our platform to improve their targeting, but that same data becomes valuable by media sellers to provide inventory that, you know, helps extend reach and thereby prove that the sellers who are doing that are able to be more effective and efficient for the agencies and for the marketers. You know, and my goal, again, as the TV currency lead here, is to provide a data set there that's good enough that buyers and sellers can eventually use it as the basis of their actual transactions. So moving to a world where we can actually transact on incremental reach and prove the value.
That would be awesome. So what, like with the over frequency issues you've mentioned, obviously, and ratings erosion and things of that nature, and this could be from your experience on the agency side or just, you know, in the past several months, but how have you seen behavior changing on the client and agency side, or what pivots have you guys made internally to promote change? And your position seems like might be one of them, but would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, my position was certainly one that didn't exist at VideoAmp when I started working with them about 4.5 years ago at OMG. Again, the key in my role is to help make better data available to be able to drive buyers and sellers to transact on better data. But what I saw essentially building up and then driving adoption of advanced TV at OMG is that it's kind of a dance on both sides to make the data available and then make the tools available to make it easy to use that data for better planning and buying decisions. And then eventually, as we're doing now in my current role, is to start to enable transactions around something other than just total GRP delivery, and how to get people to think about can we transact on incremental reach? Can we transact on performance? Can we help manage the changes that have to happen in both buying and selling organizations to enable the adoption of better data as it becomes available? And that's part of what the creation of this role was at VideoAmp, was to say, okay, we've got some adoption by buyers who are using our planning tools. How do we, essentially add transactional capabilities to that, allow them not just to find better sources of inventory to reach their campaign goals, but to actually be able to, click buy and make advanced TV products, whether that's data-driven linear or addressable, available as an easy-to-use way to drive to those goals.
And how far away would you guys say you are from that, from the inventory standpoint?
We did our first inventory integration, was announced at the beginning of this year with OpenAP, and that's to allow data-driven linear inventory to essentially start to show up in our platform. We're excited to be pushing toward being able to do that with addressable sources and with other inventory sources. And the offer is sort of open to the marketplace to help make it easier there. Obviously there's a huge challenge in terms of just integration with legacy systems on both the agency side, which we are a couple of years in on at VideoAmp, and on the sell side to help build out those pipes and connect them up and make things work the right way, and then to be able to enable not just planning, but actually guarantees against the data. So I'd say we're 5 to 10% complete on the inventory integration side, but that look, the appetite is certainly there today.
Awesome. Well, you kind of just touched on this, the legacy tools that agencies are using, because there is a shift in mindset, right, on the client and agency side. And I feel like conceptually people, understand the value that data-driven strategies can bring. But, there's still counterintuitively this reliance on legacy tools to plan and measure. What's your opinion on how we can affect change and incorporate strategies like addressable as part of the equation in the planning process?
Well, look, I'd love to do I'm doing whatever I can to make it go faster. And I think getting the agencies up to speed was a really important step. And I think that's now happened. At VideoAmp, we're working with, not just OMG, but also Dentsu today on advanced TV initiatives. And I think we're finally getting to the point where the media buyers are educated. But, look, one of the big obstacles comes in also managing, the organizational change on the marketer side. And, there was a huge variance across my clients on the agency side among, folks who are super well evolved toward really aggressive use of data around everything they do on one hand, and other marketers where the brand managers' bonuses are still based on traditional TV reach because that's what fits in their MMMs. And one of the things that we found was, just given the shift to streaming, those traditional reach metrics, not just to pick on that, we're really accounting for only 60% of viewers. So if your bonus was based on 90% of 60%, that's only 54%, and that's not where you want to get to. So, definitely helping the marketers to understand those outages is a really huge thing, and helping them understand how they need to adjust their comp structure and their goals. And I think the smart move is trying to enable everybody to be able to move to thinking more about effective CPMs. So how does my next dollar go toward on target and on frequency impressions rather than on bulk delivery that might have measured the right thing in a world where there were 3 networks and no streaming, and toward how the modern world of TV works today. And again, a lot of that is just an educational process and making sure that folks understand the value of tools like addressable inventory to get to people who they otherwise would be missing because they're light linear TV viewing households or have adapted other viewing behaviors that just aren't measured the usual way.
Absolutely. So, you touched on this earlier, like the data set that you guys are forming. What's the criteria on your end for, including a specific data set, and are there plans to further grow that?
So I think, where we start, and I work really closely with Josh Chasen, who's our Chief Measurability Officer, and we've been both sort of pushing for better data, him from the ComScore side and me at TiVo and OMG for a long time. What you really want to have is a data set that includes both smart TV data and set-top box data, like we're getting from Dish on the linear side. You need multiple good sources of OTT and streaming delivery data, and we believe that the best answer there is server log data that has had viewability and fraud guaranteed elimination associated with that. And you also want to have ideally a person level very granular panel that looks at cross-platform viewership, and we're certainly trying to head in that direction as quickly as we can get there. More is not necessarily better, because doing the right thing with all the available data sources and how do you combine and commingle them intelligently and turn that into forecastable household level and person's level data is really the important trick. But we're certainly trying to bring on more set-top box data as well as more smart TV ACR data as we can get in the marketplace. We're pushing hard to get better universe estimates. There's a ARF project right now that helps us understand that landscape of who's stream only, who's streaming plus linear, who's linear only, and how are those things changing over time. And also to help with the change management side, to help make that better data available, not just in a ratings platform or in a planning tool, but throughout the entire ecosystem. Again, so folks can plan, buy, transact, and measure against that same data.
Awesome. Well, I feel like we're almost just at time, and we've gone through, a lot of the questions that we chatted about. But I guess to end on a lighter note, I know pre-COVID you enjoyed traveling quite a bit. Any plans to take a big trip now that things are sort of improving, or have you gotten to travel in any way recently?
Well, I went to my first company offsite with the Video Amp folks in Orange County about 6 weeks ago, and got to meet some of my colleagues who I'd never met in person before, though I'd been working with them for 6 months. That was awesome. I'm looking forward to actually visiting the Video Amp LA office, where I've been many times for the first time as an employee. My mom moved to the Bay Area, and I haven't visited her since she's been there, and left my ancestral homelands in Wisconsin. And I've got a high school junior child who is hoping to actually be able to visit some college campuses in person over the summer to have a decision informed by something other than Zoom tours. So lots of travel opportunity in my near future. And, I'm just glad that we're headed in that direction.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan, and thanks, David, for everything.
Thanks for the opportunity, Lauren. David, thanks for moderating, and look forward to seeing many of you out there in the audience in person over drinks as soon as possible.
I hope so. I think the pent-up demand is there. We're hearing from our community every day. We're getting ready to get back to the real world, assuming that it continues to get, safer to do so. We're just as excited as you guys. So hopefully soon, drinks in the real world. We'll see you there.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I love it. All right, we're going to keep the show rolling. So again, thank you to Jonathan and Lauren. We've got our next session coming up. We have a big group discussion now. We're going to be talking about addressable TV and embracing the era of addressable television. One of the hottest topics we hear about from our community day in and day out, especially as we talk to the media side of the industry. So I'd like to welcome Ben Jankowski, our friend at MasterCard, the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Group Head of Global Media. We have Jason Trubowitz, the AVP of Strategic Planning and Advertising at United Health Group. Eric Neville, Senior Media Manager at Cadillac. Jim D'Antoni, our moderator, the Director of National Sales at Dish Media, and our co-moderator, Dan Kelly, the Director at Dish Media. So let's welcome virtually a big round of applause to our group now. Ben, Jason, Eric, Jim, Dan, we've got a great discussion planned. So welcome.
How's everyone doing?
Good.
Thrilled to have you all here. So, Jim and Dan, I will turn the stage over to you. It looks like Ben is still, there you go. We got Ben, welcome back, who was just joined us the other week during our big media buying summit. So it's great to see you back here again, Ben. Like I said, thrilled to have you all. Going to be a great conversation. Jim, Dan, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. My name is Jim D'Antoni, Director of National Sales at Dish Media, and I'm joined by Dan Kelly, who's the Director of West Coast Sales at Dish Media, and we're going to be leading this next session, which is going to be all about addressable television. And we're joined by three very knowledgeable brand side executives: Ben Jankowski of MasterCard, Eric Neville of Cadillac, as well as Jason Trubowitz of United Health Group. And we're going to do some more formal introductions once we get to the roundtable portion. But this session will be broken into two different sections, two different parts. First will be a quick overview of the recent addressable white paper that Forrester Consultants did on behalf of Dish Media, as well as some other industry partners. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Everyone can see that?
Yep.
Great. Great. So in terms of the white paper, Dish Media led the charge. There were other partners in there, and we really we based on a number of things. Two that I'll mention is obviously the continued transition to data-driven media buying tactics. This is nothing new, but it's certainly increased and accelerated last year, and just it continues to do so in 2021. And the other, maybe more importantly, is the very, very loud, drumbeat we hear is the need for greater attribution or accountability with brand marketers' television buys. So when you look at the current state of the television marketplace, obviously, ratings erosions continued. That's nothing new. But when it's really different, I mean, this has been a couple decades in the making, but it just continues to change. The TV marketplace is so drastically different than it was 12 months, let alone 18 months ago. And you talk to buyers, and there's exasperation in their voices in some of these cases. They can't get guarantees. It's a different ecosystem. Content consumption is up. Overall, obviously we had that. And it continues the migration of viewerships and ad dollars to the OTT space. And fragmentation, it just continues to make things tougher. It just complicates things. It's tougher to manage your frequency. There's just more layers involved. We're obviously big believers in addressable TV. We've been at it for 8 or 9 years, and we really wanted to look not only at the current state of addressable, but also what action steps need to be taken to achieve what we hope will be a future state of addressable. So Forrester Research interviewed over 500 brand and agency executives, and we're really thrilled about the insights that came out of this. So what do we learn? Well, number one, the future is very bright. There's a lot of enthusiasm behind addressable TV, the need for greater attribution to be able to tie TV buys to outcomes. But we also know that there are clear challenges, that it's complicated. It's time consuming to get attribution results relative to other outlets. It's still too fragmented. There's still a great need for education. So clearly there's challenges there to get to a place where we're going to be addressable will be more mainstream, if you will, accepted. And then third, there's a clear need for industry collaboration, not just with addressable, obviously, but just with a lot of things with this changing ecosystem. But addressable certainly is going to be a part of that. And to get true change, these aren't easy fixes, and it's going to have to be everyone at the table kind of working together to achieve that change, those changes. So from a buyer's standpoint, the number one priority is to optimize addressable strategies. Over half of the people who were interviewed for this study wanted to improve their targeting ability and the effectiveness of their television targeting. 47% want to tie attribution to outcomes, and 44% want to deliver more relevant, personalized ads to their consumers. Less waste is what it comes down to, and just more targeted. So all of these things line up well for addressable. So we feel, yes, there is an absolute need and a continued desire to achieve what addressable can bring to the party. Another interesting thing we found out was addressable is not only being used for kind of lower funnel, if you will, traditional lower funnel, but it's really all parts of the consumer journey. So when you look at the numbers to the right, the addressable numbers versus the traditional linear numbers, you see that in every case that there's more of an emphasis on addressable, not just again for that call to action purchase kind of desire, but also upper funnel branding and discover awareness metrics as well as consideration. So all parts of that consumer journey are being addressable, being used effectively for. Like I said, challenges do exist. I mean, all of the respondents, 100% face at least one challenge when it comes to executing an addressable buy. The continued lack of education, or expertise within the marketplace. I heard it mentioned last week, and it was described as one of the major headwinds is misinformation. People who think they know what addressable is, and they may not know that when you really get into the nuance of the medium, they don't know. So there's a lot of people who use OTT and they say, well, I'm getting my advanced targeting that way. It's not as precise as one-to-one addressable. So that misinformation or need for education, that's an ongoing element to making addressable more mainstream. It's complex and fragmented. It's too time consuming. Attribution windows too long. Sometimes you have 90, even longer. I heard recently of a 6-month attribution window. So it's just tough to, when the pressure's on for an executive to say, yeah, I'm gonna take this leap, but I can't prove results for 3, 5, or sometimes 6 months. And then obviously no unified measurement, and this is not applicable just to addressable, but clearly addressable is part of that. But all parts of the ever evolving video ecosystem continue to need to have better cross-screen measurement. There's no question about that. So, fewer than 40% of the executive surveys felt very confident in their ability to, execute effectively in an addressable buy. That's just too low, and there are a number of reasons for that in terms of, what's needed, whether it's, multifaceted interoperability, increased education, greater clarity and transparency in terms of measurement. You've got 2/3 of the respondents saying these are the areas, these are the 3 core areas that you need to focus on to improve this. And again, to make addressable, be able to scale and become more mainstream. And everyone's got a role to play. There's no question to achieve interoperability, greater education, and improved measurement. Media companies, we need to align our offerings. There's no question about that. Brands need to kind of lean into it. Many are. The three panelists that we have today certainly are. But other brands need to lean in, test, learn, optimize. And then agencies need to commit to addressable, we feel, and make it more of their part of their strategic planning process. And I think they also have a great opportunity to lead and educate. And some are doing that better than others. But we need a greater number of agencies leaning into this. And in terms of data and tech, broadly, it comes down to more alignment and transparency and less silos and fragmentation. So a lot of work to do, and it does take commitment. These are not fast solves, and it does take time, and a collaborative effort, if you will. So how do we get there? Well, this roundtable will be a good start, I assure you. But there's we're going to go over a lot of those themes. It's not going to be limited to just the Forrester white paper. So Dan, I'm going to let Dan Kelly will kind of take us out in this area. I will definitely get a question in too as well. But I'm thrilled about the conversation coming up in the roundtable. So with that, Dan, I'll throw to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Jim. As Jim mentioned, my name is Dan Kelly, and I'm the sales director at Dish Media here out in sunny Los Angeles. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with 3 clients who represent 3 very different products and all at different stages of use of addressability. So as we kind of take a live approach to the Forrester report that Jim just summarized for us, it'll be good to kind of get their perspective and go through a couple of different questions with them. As we are discussing the future of TV, as the webinar is titled, it definitely reminds me of when I first started in the business as a junior research analyst at Turner, helping to prepare what would become known as Media at the Millennium. And that was a presentation that spoke about how cable was finally ready to get its proper share of the revenue from broadcast networks when it came to ad dollars. And today we are definitely at another inflection point as the acceptance of addressable and impression-based buying is gaining momentum in the new TV media mix. And without a doubt, that growth was definitely accelerated during the course of the events of this past year. But before we focus on the future of addressable, we want to take a moment to reflect on the current state by getting the point of view of our guest today. And then from there, we'll shift into some of the future state of addressable, following up on the earlier panel about some of the hurdles we need to clear in order to get wide acceptance. I asked the panelists, before you answer your first question, just please just take a second to introduce yourself and include your role within your organization. It'd be much appreciated. So let's start with Eric and your point of view on the current state of addressable TV.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Eric Neville, and probably don't have a traditional media background. I came up of the analytics world and CRM world. And I think what's interesting is with Addressable, CRM is the thing again, right? It's just in a different medium outside of direct mail and email. So with that, obviously, very bullish on ATV, big user of it. Cadillac started using it back in 2019, where it was a small percent of our total TV mix. It's grown from there. We're 5x where we were in 19, sitting here in 2021. And I think no matter which way we look at it, whether it be closed loop sales reporting, right? We hold our own control groups before we distribute data, media mix modeling, or partner data. It all points to it's working for us. So we're very bullish on it, and look forward to figuring out how we continue to push the envelope.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. Ben, how about yourself? What's your current take on the current situation of addressable TV?
Hey, so I'm Ben Jankowski. I help MasterCard manage our paid media globally. Been with the company for 10 years or so. Obviously it's an addressable space. I think in Eric's spot, there's really high potential. The potential is there to be one of the most powerful tools that we have. It takes the best of the targetability of digital and marries it with, the big, huge, environmental benefits of what, linear TV, provides us from a standpoint of like environment and things like that. So very, very bullish. I think that we spend a lot of energy at MasterCard to be really contextually relevant. Everybody wants to be contextually relevant, but we really focus around, contextually relevant around purchase occasion passions, right? So, if you can motivate me to use use MasterCard when I'm, doing things that I love, then I'm gonna be a better customer. So we work to try to find those contextually relevant environments. And again, I wish it were more. One of the things we have to figure out, and I think that Jim and I have talked about it before, and is how do we deliver the messaging side? Like the targetability and our ability to distribute those messages has been there. We got to figure out the message side. If I don't deliver a customized, unique message, then I've wasted a huge opportunity. So we got to figure that side of it out. And when we do, it'll be a huge part of our mix.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben. Last but not least, Jason, what's your thoughts on the current state of addressable?
So hi, everyone. This is Jason Trubowitz. I oversee the media planning for all of the portfolio of the brands within the United Health Group roster. And prior to that, I was at NBC News, also working in-house media planning. But my experience all leading up to that was on the agency side. So I think we keep all talking about how the addressable landscape has a ton of potential. And I guess some of the things that we're going to be talking about today are, the potential, but also some of the roadblocks. So we, especially United Health Group, we have a lot of portfolio brands that are actually not applicable to many, Medicare and retirement being one of them. So if we're wasting messages out to people who simply are not eligible and have no interest in a product like a Medicare and retirement, they're under 65, there's a lot of waste potential there. So again, I always believe it's a tremendous technology. I used it a lot during my NBC News days because we wanted to track tune-in conversion from some of the efforts we did. But there are some roadblocks. So could be very applicable for many of our brands, especially those that need a laser targeted approach. But it's not, sometimes we need immediate reaction, immediate response, which, isn't always available with addressable.
Again, thanks, Jason. You point out perfect use case with a certain Medicare situation that there's an obvious large age set that's not in the market for it. So why kind of speak to them? Bringing us back to the hurdles. What are the hurdles that we need to kind of overcome? That's how you use it. But so I guess we'll go back to Jason on this one. Is what is it that you think is holding companies back from the widespread adoption and usage of addressable? We're able to identify its great uses. What's the holdback?
Sure. Well, I think as we talk about all the great uses of it, one of the roadblocks, I think, is everyone wants to know then the conversion results from utilizing it. So, some of the roadblocks are that I approached in my days at NBC News. We wanted to know, tune-in conversion, and it didn't help if we only knew that 3 to 6 months later. So I get into a more immediate need to understand what is working and what is not when we're talking about Medicare and retirement signups are in Q4. And we need to have an immediate shift, an immediate move if we're optimizing and finding things are not working. So we use, different technologies to understand what's working on a day-to-day basis that we optimize immediately. And if you're using a technology, as great as it may be in terms of laser targeting, if we don't know until the end of the sign-up period, then we have a real roadblock ahead of us. So we can't prove out the success of the technology, even though my gut is it probably will work for even a Medicare and retirement type of effort. But there are a multitude of brands within the United Health Group portfolio that also have laser targeted approaches. But when you're talking about signups and you're talking about conversions, we can't wait a whole quarter. We can't wait half a year to find out if what we're doing is successful. So anything in an addressable realm that lets us laser target is very attractive, but the biggest roadblock is the readout at the back end, or even the beginning, where not all technologies for each MVPD operate the same. The whole process leading into a potential addressable buy can also be a very, very long lead time type of effort. So something that needs immediate turnaround can wind up being a 6-month process, which certainly isn't attractive to all. So,
yeah, to your point, the optimization window varies so much from from customer to customer, client to client kind of situation. And with further advancements of the connectivity and IP of a household, hopefully that optimization will get as close to real time as possible. Obviously a long way to go there, but definitely on the roadmap, if you would. Ben, how about yourself? What do you see as holding up the addressable?
Yeah, I mean, Jim talked about a lot of them when we were talking about the white paper, right? He talked about a lot of the things around education, and it's a complicated landscape. I mean, it's a lot. It's for our agency partners, and you talked about one of the groups that has to drive change. Is one of the groups is the ultimate agencies who are part of the mix. I'm not blaming the agencies. It's a complicated way to buy today, right? So and even Jonathan talked about it in the last panel about it's just the variance and how you attack it. It's a complicated space. So it's holding people back. It's educate. It's the things that Jim talked about, right? I still think that the copy is, I don't know if it's holding us back, the ability to create messages, as much as it is an opportunity that's maybe lost. It's a lot of the things that I don't have a whole lot new than what Jason already mentioned and Jonathan and Jim talked about. I mean, it's hard. It's harder to buy. There's no consistent. It's a challenge to get consistent measures. The landscape's complicated. So unfortunately, I don't have anything creatively new than what Jim's huge white paper did. And if I did, I'd be like something. That wouldn't be right.
Thanks, Ben. Obviously, we're hearing plenty about the challenges. Eric, Cadillac has really leaned into addressability. Could you perhaps share a little bit on how Cadillac is overcoming some of the hurdles that we've already heard about here and implementing addressable into your media mix?
Yeah, so we've taken a huge step in terms of understanding our data, right? Whether that be our customer data or using our customer data to go out and find a high propensity Cadillac audience. So everything we do is data driven, from a media buy to creative development. It's all led by who our audience is and who our target is. So that is kind of first and foremost where we're at. Outside of that, we not one single, and I'm sure Dan, you don't want to hear this, but not one single ATV provider has max reach, right? A lot of the cable companies are geographic. Obviously, you guys are not. So you really do have to activate at a broad scale if you want to get reach. I think the other thing too is, obviously a big metrics guy. I think one, changing that mindset of metrics and moving away from traditional linear TV metrics to more things like closed loop effectiveness, kind of what John talked about from Video Amp, right? You need to reset your business priorities and really start to say, hey, this is, even though it's TV, it is a little bit different. And I think trying to compare and contrast the two is a challenge. So you really have to have clear goals of what you're doing. From a Cadillac standpoint, right now we're using it to move sheet metal. We're using it in that lower funnel space, starting to trickle into the upper funnel space. But data is key, and having strong data partnerships is the way to go.
Thanks, Eric. And listen, to your point, we totally understand and really embrace the fact that when it comes to addressability, in order for it to truly be effective, there's multiple partners that are needed. Now, granted, I want the entire budget, but you know what? We do have to play nice in the sandbox in order for the best return on investment for you, the client. So that's one of those hurdles that we're working to overcome is working together to make sure that the product is cohesive.
And I think
to the client.
Dan, it's kind of interesting, right? So we're not used to the mindset of that, tide will rise all the boats. And again, the same as marketers aren't used to collaborating together to try to get industry things accomplished, right? Most platforms aren't used to working together when ultimately, like especially in some of the new video spaces, you have to figure it out, and your ability to figure it out will benefit everybody. But it's a counterculture way that we think about it, right? Because we're not used to. I'm used to thinking as my direct competitors as my is the people I'm the enemies per se. But it's like we can't think that way. We have to. That uncommon collaboration is how we have to kind of that's how we're going to have to solve it, right? Because you guys and when we do, it will benefit everybody. So sorry to cut in on you there.
No, that's great, because that's what it is. There's changes that need to take place on all three verticals, right? From the client perspective, our side of it, and the agency side.
Yep.
So with that in mind, Jason, what's a thing or two that perhaps you see from a marketer's perspective that needs to perhaps change in order to embrace this addressability?
Well, I think Ben touched on it for one thing. Everyone is still working, everyone's talking about addressable. Everyone does it differently. There's a different perception amongst advertisers, amongst agencies about the effectiveness of it. And even yesterday in some of the upfronts, I think if it was Viacom, CBS, and even Disney, they talk about bringing addressable technology to the table. And I don't think they're talking about the same addressable technology that you guys are, because they're not measuring conversion on the back end. So I think people are talking about addressable just as a way to laser target, which is a great part of addressable, but that's only part of addressable. So there's an industry-wide either lack of full understanding what the addressable technology can do. There's everyone's talking about it like it's the catchphrase these days, but everyone does it differently. It means a different thing to everyone. So let's all get together in kumbaya and be one big happy family across companies and figure out what the hell it is and how it can work most effectively.
No, I think, sorry to cut in again. I think the technological challenges are not as difficult as the cultural challenges. Let's be honest. There's some people in the industry who don't want to drive change. They like the way things have gone. Thank you very much. So how do we kind of motivate and inspire the whole industry? That's what we haven't figured out yet. We have to figure it out. Otherwise, we're not going to change. I don't mean to sound cynical, but I think that's reality.
Eric, how about yourself? As Cadillac has leaned in, what were some of the things that had to were overcome in the minds of some of the folks around the boardroom?
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to have a CMO who's very data-centric, data-focused. She did some modeling in her past life. So definitely having leadership understand that and drive to that. I think what really kind of sealed the deal for us was being able to show sales impact, right? And unlike Jason, I think the auto industry is used to kind of longer lead times. So ATV, it didn't bother us, right? We matched a sale at 60 days anyway. So it's really not any slower for us. But overall, I think, right, one, you need the commitment. Two, you got to run some pilots to have some data to prove it. And really it's talking with you guys, understanding what's out there, I often reach out to our ATV partners to say, hey, we have a problem. How can you help us? Right. Whether it be a measurement problem or an activation problem. I think the last point is, the pandemic helped us a lot in ATV, right? We're able to go out to the marketplace in a local level fashion with national dollars and target audiences and target dealers that were open during COVID. And, having that flexibility and that nimbleness really made a difference for us. So that kind of opened a lot of eyes, and, being able to get the right offer to the right person at the right time. Addressable helped us with that.
And Eric touches on a great point, because it's about success and results, right? So you would think, oh, this is a no-brainer. It's a phenomenal technology. Why don't we all do it? So I've had that exact conversation before. Like, hey, this proves out results. And then someone, a CMO or a chairman of my department says, well, why don't we do everything? Put all of our money into it. Oh, well, it's going to cost a little bit more. What? It's going to cost more? And we won't know the results for 3 to 6 months. Wait, what? And we can't cover 100% of the United States. Oh, what? So, there's an eagerness to really do this because of the technology, because of the targeting capability, because of the conversion results on the back end. So if all those roadblocks about, cost wouldn't be that big a deal, because you pay more to get more, but you can't prove out the getting more for months. So then cost becomes a concern. The not being able to have 100% or even close to it footprint of the US, well, then I can't put all my money behind it, because then I'm excluding, a big percentage of the country that's not going to see my messaging. And hey, if I spend more, I have to show the results are working. Oh, well, you can't do that for 3 to 6 months. Well, so there's that cycle of, oh, we really want to do this. The technology is phenomenal. Why haven't we been doing this for years? Well, you haven't been doing it for years because of X, Y, Z, which are, a little bit of a hurdle.
How about from our agency partners? What would you identify as being maybe a change in thought or behavior from them? We can start with Ben on that.
I think the biggest thing in my mind, and again, it's maybe start thinking about the holistic user consumer experience rather than breaking it into pieces. And I understand and appreciate that every platform has its uniqueness to it, and we have to deal with it. But to still have, if I've got, 3 different buyers, one doing linear, one doing advanced, one doing digital, if they're still not, all rowing in the same direction, then I've lost an opportunity to really drive effectiveness. So I think the biggest thing is to kind of think more holistically about how to kind of solve the problem. That's my biggest one.
Jason or Eric, any thoughts on the agency's change or point of view?
I think Ben touched on something interesting. You've got multiple groups doing multiple things that in many ways compete with each other. So you've got different teams within the agency that are pushing their own technologies, who they don't understand the other technology. And so ultimately it's almost an inner conflict. And I do think some agencies feel reluctant to share out a potential idea as an addressable because of all the hurdles, because they don't want to be on the back end or the receiving end of their clients saying, wait, it costs how much? Or wait, why would you recommend this to me if I can't see result in 6 months? So agencies, and now there's more and more ways to addressably target and laser focus your media, that it's almost like addressable could have been the greatest achievement ever, but it's been slow to get there. So now there's all these other options that agencies can recommend. So, there's a little bit of problem.
Jason, I think we've also, one thing that we're guilty of as marketers, some of them, not all of them, is we've also created such an environment where we beat up agencies on fees and things like that. We try to be fair partners. Everybody thinks they're being fair, but it's in the eyes of the beholder. They keep getting squeezed. And if it's harder and it costs them more, they're not, they can't invest and spend when they're getting squeezed by marketers on their margins and stuff like that. So that's one element of it as well, which we got to get some blame for that.
Oh, we haven't gotten the hook yet. So Eric, anything else on that, or go to the next question?
I think, right, it's a journey. And I think we need to acknowledge that with our agencies, and we need to be a good partner just as they are to us. And, if everybody has the mindset that we're going to go into this, we're going to maybe have some missteps, which are learnings, and we're going to get through it because we know we have some indications that this is the right way to go. So, I personally, I think our agency's been fantastic. They're thought provoking. They brought us into the M1 mix in Merkle, which is wonderful. So, I think from our standpoint, it's teamwork, dreamwork, right? It's got to be a one-stop shop.
And just to add something to that very quickly, and this, I hope this doesn't sound self-promoting, but you've got 3 people here who are on the client side who have a media background and media expertise. That's not always the case. So agencies will feel comfortable talking to us about these opportunities because they know we understand them. I could name a gazillion companies, probably more companies that don't have media people in-house than do have them, like as our companies. So agencies may feel reluctant that they have to completely educate their clients, which again takes time, which again may not be a successful approach because their clients don't understand what they're talking about. So again, not meant for self-promotion, but obviously Cadillac, MasterCard, and UHG, we have media people who understand the conversation around addressable opportunities and so forth. And that's not always the case for a lot of major companies.
Very true.
I would just, if I could just jump, quickly,
Jim.
Joe, I completely agree with that. And it really, sometimes you're talking to brand marketers and you're spoon feeding very basic, data driven, tactics. And other times, just like the 3 of you, very informed and opinions and experience. So, but you guys, I wouldn't call you the complete exception, but there needs to be more, more marketers leaning into their first party data and that ecosystem overall.
To wrap things up, Eric, you kind of mentioned a little bit on data there. And as we're talking about elements that need to change or evolve to help Addressable, get to that next stage, data obviously parallels and runs hand in hand with a big hot topic of today, right? And that of privacy. So start with Ben on this one. Obviously, credit cards being critical when it comes to privacy. What role do you see or what changes need to be made on the data side of things to help us continue to evolve Addressable?
I mean, Dan, you're right. I mean, there's no sacrifice. There's no compromise that we make around, data and privacy and security, right? Our customers and consumers like their privacy and safety is the most important thing for us. And there's a lot of things that others do, and I'm not being critical of others. There's a lot of things that others do that we don't do just because it's not in the best interest of our consumers and our customers. We've done a lot of work around like a data policy of making sure that it's customer and consumer centric and they know what we're doing with it and we have the right opt-ins and things like that. I think it'll be really interesting. One of the things that we haven't talked about, and it's kind of like the elephant in the room that it's like for the whole industry, is like, what's going to be the impact of other options when we start talking about cookieless world? What's going to happen? And if anybody's got an answer to that on this call, please let me know, because I don't think no one's got an answer because we haven't figured it out yet. But we all have to get on a learning plan to figure that out. And we're going to see radical changes. I anticipate when Chrome stops accepting third-party cookies, we're going to see radical changes in the efficacy of digital performance, and we have to figure out how that impacts everything that we do. So that's going to be a huge change. I don't have an answer for it, unfortunately. I don't think anybody can because it hasn't happened yet. But that's going to, the next year is going to be a really wild ride when it comes to data, how we use it, and the efficacy of how we use it as use it to help us target better, because there's going to be so many changes with IDFA and the loss of third-party cookies that we're going to have to figure it out, and that's an exciting yet nerve-wracking part of what we have to do in the next year.
And Ben, I know the hook is coming shortly, but we definitely have answers for that when it comes to viewership data, right?
I've decided that's a new drinking game, because the number of emails I get on, we've got a cookieless world solution for you. I tell somebody on my team it should be every time we get an email, we should be able to do a shot, and we wouldn't get past 10 o'clock. Not that your solution, forgive me if I sound disrespectful, I'm sure your solution is brilliant. One of the opportunities is there's about 25, 30, 40 opportunities out there that we just have to navigate. Eric, Jason, I, and our peers all have to navigate through it. So it's really exciting. And I don't mean to say that I'm sure yours is fabulous, but there's a lot out there that we have to navigate.
Well, I'd love to be able to take you through it, perhaps over a shot or two, or at least a cold beer. That would definitely work better for me. So, listen, we are. I know where David should be popping on, and
It is.
here
Good
it comes
timing.
now. So, I did just want to take a minute to thank our three guests, Jason, Eric, Ben. Really do appreciate your time and your insights here. And we definitely look forward to working together to continue to enhance and evolve Addressable and collaborate together to overcome the hurdles, some of which we've been able to talk live here today.
Thanks, everybody.
This was
Yeah, big thank you.
Thanks for having us.
fantastic. Thank you guys so much. I would say, Ben, I could think of some safer drinking games for sure that we could all play. But to your point, I mean, whether it's the death of the cookie, the evolving agency dynamic, I mean, so many of these are rich conversations that they could warrant their own, half-day event. But, we appreciate you guys sharing with us. Frankly, as an outsider, working with all these amazing players in the industry, I'm fascinated and I'm excited to see how you guys continue to adapt to some of these changes over the next year. So, hopefully we'll bring you back. We'll keep these conversations going when we figure out answers. Then we'll bring you back on stage to talk about how you've tackled some of these challenges. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing with our community. This was a great one.
Pleasure.
Guys.
Awesome.
Thanks again, guys.
Wonderful. So big round of applause virtually from everybody on YouTube and Zoom. Ben, Jason, Eric, Dan, Jim. Awesome conversation. We're going to keep the show rolling. We have another great discussion, again, tackling some of those topics, moving a little bit in a different direction, looking at driving scale with identity and safe haven solutions. So again, a great group we have joining in. Bill Stratton, the global head of media, entertainment, and advertising at Snowflake. Brad Donaher, the director of TV solutions at Experian. Gareth Davis, the VP of product at LiveRamp. Jason Manningham, the CEO of BlockGraph. And our wonderful moderator, Kamal Bukhari, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, the general manager of data and analytics at Dish Media. So another great group, another fantastic topic. We hope that you guys out there in Zoom land and YouTube land are eating this up, and these kinds of conversations and the insights being shared are really compelling and helping prepare and arm you for the conversations that are going on right now these days during upfront seasons and just to make your jobs that much easier. So again, welcome Gareth, Brad, Kamal, Jason, Bill. It's great to have you here. I think a couple of you are still on mute. We're waiting for Kamal to get the camera going to kick things off. But how's everybody doing today?
Doing great. Thanks, David. Good to see everyone.
Awesome.
Well,
Gareth, is that a virtual background or are you back in the office?
Oh, no, it's virtual.
You never know these days. I mean, we're
Never
starting
know.
here. I was going to say,
good.
Bill, I don't think you're in the mountains, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, this is not virtual at all. I'm here. At
That
the
sounds
base.
amazing.
Yeah, the Sherpas are ready to go. We're ready to climb.
I hope you got your gear. Stay warm. Again, if you need to, get some oxygen. We hear you. So yeah, I say it looks like Kamal is trying to log in now. So just give that a second. While we're waiting for Kamal to join in, why don't we? Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Technical difficulties.
It's the name of the game in 2021. We've all been there. So, but you're here now. So I will flip the stage over to you if you want to welcome everyone and kind of kick off introductions and dive into things. It's all yours.
Great. Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it. If we can get rid of, I see myself 3 times on the screen, but thank you, everyone. Welcome to the next panel on driving scale with identity and safe haven solutions. I'm Kamal Bukhari. I'm the general manager of data analytics at Dish Media. And I have great leaders in the identity space with me. Identity has been a hot topic over the past year, so I'm looking forward to getting into this discussion. We only have 20 minutes. We could probably talk about identity for 20 hours. But here's how I'm going to start. I'm going to start off with you, Brad, and maybe we'll just go around the horn. If you can introduce yourselves, your company, and elaborate on how your company helps advertisers with identity.
All right. Thanks, Kamal. Good to be here. Yes, I'm Brad Danaher, and I'm the manager of or director of TV strategy here at Experian Marketing Services. And most people know Experian as a credit bureau. My division has consumer information on U.S. households.
really the largest set of data, consumer demographic behavioral data in the country. And we have a TV group that's been working with brands, agencies, and TV partners like Dish, so essentially companies that enable targeted TV. And we've been doing that for a long time. I was fortunate to be part of the very first addressable trial that Comcast did way back when. And so Experian helps with data linkage and measurement. And Kamal, to your question, identity, essentially we've been mashing first-party data and third-party data to media data for years. So with, direct mail is our history. It's been something that we've been doing for a long time. So we essentially have always provided that neutral third party in the middle for advertisers and brands.
Great, thank you, Brad. Bill?
Hey, I'm Bill Stratton. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Sound check.
Yes, we
Sounds
can.
like that is. I head up the media, entertainment, advertising vertical at a company called Snowflake. We are a cloud data platform. We started our live several years ago as a data warehouse that sat across clouds. And now we've moved into sort of defining a new category that is a data cloud itself. Our company has grown fairly quickly, one of the fastest growing software companies. We had an IPO last year successfully, and we essentially work across every industry vertical. I lead our media, entertainment, and advertising, but we have business and a lot of activity and customers in every major vertical: financial services, healthcare, retail, CPG, to name a few. And essentially, to your question, Kamal, from an identity standpoint, Snowflake's not a data company. We don't own or sell data. We don't own or sell identity information or enrichment. We're a architecture and a technology that sits across every cloud that allows you to collaborate and join data together, which can include identity data and other data sets like point of sale or advertising information and so forth. So we work with a good number of the people on this panel to execute that. But glad to be here today. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for being here, Bill. Garrett?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Kamal. I'm Gareth Davis, VP Product at LiveRamp, and I look after our Safe Haven data collaboration platform. And at the core, for those of you who know us, and maybe some who don't, LiveRamp is an identity company at the very foundation. And we spent over the last decade helping some of the biggest brands and publishers and platforms across the digital ecosystem bridge offline PII and CRM record level data and bring it into the digital world for targeting, measurement, attribution, and so forth. And then also, as of late, we've helped, as we think about publisher addressability through ATS, we have the authenticated traffic solution that helps publishers basically maintain a consented and authenticated user base, and then provides a pseudonymous identifier for common targeting and measurement across the open ecosystem. And then Safe Haven really builds on that identity foundation, both our identity offering plus ATS, to then provide an environment for enterprise customers to collaborate. So there's core audience management and a really rich set of tools around advanced analytics. But at the foundation, it's helping two entities and more, whether it's a CPG and their retailer partner, they want to bring in their MVPD partner for closed loop measurement. How do we help multiple organizations come together with a common understanding of identity and support collaborative use cases that drives better addressable targeting and measurement, and doing all of that with a really robust foundation of privacy and permissions.
Great to have you, Garrett. Jason?
Thank you. Great to be here. Jason Manningham. I'm the CEO and founder of Blockgraph. Blockgraph is a company that was initially started and formed within Comcast. A year ago, we spun Blockgraph off into a privately held partnership between Comcast, Charter, and Viacom CBS. And Blockgraph's technology is provided to a variety of companies within the convergent TV ecosystem to help them put their data to work across the myriad of different distribution points. and be able to essentially match in a box. So we provide technology that allows companies to interoperate with a variety of identity services, measurement services, clean rooms, distribution points, and really take control of their own identity future. So we provide a technology infrastructure that we call the identity operating system that allows companies to build on top of their own audience data, their own first and third party data, connect it with their partners, and do that in a way that is in alignment with their own data confidentiality and privacy needs. So we provide technology, and that allows companies to work together with a variety of different clean room and safe haven solutions.
Great, thank you, Jason. I have a question for you, Gary, and then I'll hand it over to Brad. Why is identity so important for the TV advertising industry? What does it facilitate and enable?
Yeah, so I think really identity, I think of it as the foundation of addressable advertising, right? To have a precise and consented single view of the customer, whether at the individual or the household level, is really the foundation needed to drive more efficient, relevant, and rewarding advertising experiences that consumers love and engage with. And so I think if you look at the last decade plus of innovation in digital and display, and how identity has become the lingua franca of digital advertising, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for us to learn from both the success of identity in digital as well as some of the pitfalls, and really do it right when we think about TV. And so if we can take some of the precision and consent-based approaches of addressable targeting in digital and bring that to both the medium and the scale of TV, I think we have just a tremendous opportunity to transform the relevance and the impact of TV advertising. So for me, that's a really exciting and compelling opportunity. And if we think about use cases, I mean, it's the full gamut, right? From better targeting, audience segmentation, it's yield management on the supply side of the equation to increase and support larger CPMs, and is ultimately better end consumer experiences as you get more targeted and relevant advertising.
Great, Gary. Anything to add, Brad?
Yeah, just the TV industry, I think, needs to compete with the walled gardens, right? So we need to build trust with the brands. And by doing, what Gareth is talking about is spot on. We need to show that the TV industry has their act together, can be trusted with the data, and it's joined together, that kind of all of us are working toward. That's what's needed to compete in this world. So, and the other point I'd make is how it helps enable it by simplifying buying and managing campaigns, which again we're hearing that constantly again, that needs to be simpler. It's simpler in other spots, other walled gardens sometimes. It needs to be simpler for us.
Great. The next question is for Bill. There are various methods in executing addressable with first-party data. We talked about safe havens, matching platforms, clean room. What method does your company use? How effective is it for advertisers? Any case studies you can share?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, part of the challenge in this is that we're still really not even to the first out of the first inning. And it's still very early days in terms of collaborating with data and different identity data sets and so forth. So from a Snowflake standpoint, what we do is we're trying to allow our customers, whether it's an advertiser that's advertising in TV. I came from the TV business. I spent 25 years in the TV business. So whether we allow an advertiser to decide what kind of metric and data and currency that they want to transact on from a buying perspective, or whether it's the media company or the publisher, what they want to use as a currency or measurement, we're very independent of that. But we allow, really at scale that I think is unparalleled, where, many companies can join data collaboratively together, whether your data is in a cloud, region, whatever. Snowflake sits across all of that. And in many ways, that's fueled our growth. That network effect that we have a very high retention rate, one of the highest in software history, because people actually don't pay us unless they use our product. And so they start using our product because we can, scale around analytics and customer data and query data and things like that. And so when you start to join data together, we've got, big, large companies sharing data across their organization as a customer record without copying or moving it. And then we've got companies that are looking and buying media and joining their data with their partners, again, without copying or moving their data. So that data sovereignty aspect to what we bring is becoming a very powerful tool set for companies. We had an announcement a couple of weeks ago with NBC. They're powering their ad platform on top of Snowflake. We've had, public other companies that are working with us. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll be having a customer summit. We'll share a lot more use cases there. So
great, Bill. Look forward to your summit.
Yeah.
Jason, anything you want to add from Blockgraph's perspective?
Yeah, I think, and maybe not from Blockgraphs, but the industry, if you take a step back, I think we would all agree with this, there are a myriad of, 80 plus companies that are in the identity resolution space right now. There are a couple of very successful or soon to be very successful clean room offerings that are great for analytics. And I think from a marketer's perspective, having the ability to put their data to work in the TV industry is highly complex. And Brad mentioned that we need to make it simpler. I think the reality is it hasn't been simple thus far in the industry. And I think being able to reach an audience and to distribute that audience wherever it needs to go, whether that's a seller, a media seller, a publisher, a distributor, or a platform, having the tools and empowering the marketer who owns that first party data to make an intelligent choice based on their privacy controls. I think that's where the industry needs to go. And then on the flip side, the other side of the first party data, the distributors, giving them the same controls and tools that help them match their data, move it when it's relevant and appropriate, and not move it when it's not relevant and appropriate, is something that we are really focused on, is really giving the tools that allow companies to take control of their own destiny.
Great points, Jason. Garrett or Brad, anything you want to add there on specifically around any type of case studies that you can share around advertisers?
Oh, I think just a macro comment as I reflect on this, we're moving to a world of increased decentralization. And I think that's really exciting, particularly when Brad talks about digital giants and walled gardens. In a world where third-party data is under pressure and consent and privacy regulation headwinds are kind of changing the paradigm, there's an increasing focus for large marketers to unify their customer data. And in many cases, it's still fragmented within the enterprise, and trying to unify it into one common space, which is a lot of, I think, what Snowflake does. And increasingly in Safe Haven, we're helping support some of these use cases as well around unification of first-party data and ID resolution. But there's a real opportunity, rather than just to rely on third-party identities, to use collaboration as a way of connecting identity across between brands and their publisher and MVPD and TV partners, right? To create more of an open ecosystem where all the permissions and the consent is in place, and multiple parties can come to the table and all agree on a common currency. So I think that's incredibly exciting. And then just from like some of the early wins, because to Bill's point, we're extremely early here. I think we've seen a great example. We just announced this case study this week, was with Danone, a leading CPG in the dairy category, by leveraging collaboration. So Safe Haven collab with a major global retail partner. They were able to take basically in-store transaction data, marry it to their own digital campaign and ad exposure data, and then use that to inform custom audience segmentation, activation, and measurement. And when they did that with access to the retailer's data, they saw a 17% lift on their e-commerce sales and a 25% total sales increase across all of their channels. And then when you back that into some of the CPM yield lifts that we've seen publishers get, Microsoft Advertising seeing a 40% increase in CPMs through ATS, and we're seeing brands increase, triple digit in conversion metrics. I think we're seeing that consented, authenticated audiences and the ability to collaborate is driving, really meaningful performance gains.
Kamal, I'll give you one quick one. There's a company you might have heard of called Dish Media does connection with IQVIA. So, and again, that's third-party data. So it's not brand data, but the point is it's pharmaceutical data that needs to be put in a safe haven. That's enabling folks for the industry, for you to enable you to help your advertisers.
Yeah, I think building on that, I don't think that there is consensus on how fast. I think there's generally consensus that first party is the future, but I think what we've seen in the industry is that first and third party data need to be connected, activated, used in safe ways. And there is, I think, some time before we get to a world where everything is done in a non-movement use case, although that is certainly exciting. I think in the meantime, there are needs to activate data, to integrate with platforms, and having kind of all of these companies that we're on the phone with have a role to play, I think, moving forward.
Great. David, I don't know, do I have time for one more question or?
Hey there, guys. Sorry about that. I do think we need to wrap. We are at the 3:25 mark. So with that, again, I wish I could give you more time, but then we need to the next session and the next session, and just, you know, the domino effect. But this is fascinating. I love it. I mean, definitely way outside of my wheelhouse here, but I love the data talk and hearing about how you guys are solving all these problems. So thank you so much. We'll have you back again soon, because like you guys said at the kickoff, we could talk about this stuff for 20 hours, not just 20 minutes. So I know there's a lot we didn't just get into today, and we're just scratching the surface of it. But thank you all for being here, for sharing with us, and we'll have you back again soon.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye now.
Thank you, guys. All right, round of applause virtually. I know it's weird. It's a weird dynamic. You can't hear us clapping, but we are in the audience clapping for you guys and welcoming our next group of speakers. So we have Larry Allen, the Vice President and GM of Addressable Enablement at Comcast. We have John Quinn, the Senior Director of Vantage at Viacom CBS. Dan Aversano, the Senior Vice President of Data Analytics and Advanced Advertising at Univision Communication. And Tim Byers, our moderator, the Principal of Media Sales and Operations at Dish Media. So welcome, Larry. Welcome, Tim. Welcome, John. And I think we've got Dan coming in just a second. So thank you guys for being here and sharing with our community today.
Great. Very good.
Yeah.
Wait for Dan's video. There we go. And
there we go.
You're muted still, so we'll wait, let you unmute. And well, hey, I have the pleasure of getting to moderate one of the sort of sessions at the end of the day, and we get to I think touch on a lot of the topics that were covered earlier, and maybe have some really interesting solutions. We're going to be talking about what we like to refer to as a programmer addressable enablement. Sometimes it's called national minute enablement, but essentially it's the ability to extend these addressable capabilities outside of the sort of 2 minutes of local inventory where these services have been typically offered over the past 8 years or so in the linear television space. And so it's very exciting. It's something that when I first started working on addressable way back in 2000, when I worked at Visible World, right away we were talking about how do we expand beyond those 2 minutes? How do we expand to the full footprint of inventory in the television ecosystem? So with that, I'm going to just quickly let everyone give their name and the company they work for, and then we'll dive right into some questions since we only have 20 minutes or so. Why don't we start with you, John?
John Quinn, I'm the Senior Director of Vantage, which is Viacom CBS's data optimization platform.
And how about you next, Dan?
Dan Aversano, Senior Vice President of Data Analytics and Advanced Advertising at Univision.
And Larry?
Larry Allen, VP and General Manager, Addressable Enablement for Comcast Advertising, working on enabling programmers across our footprint.
Great. And as mentioned earlier, I'm Tim Myers, and I run our strategy, product, and business development. And one of my big focuses has been on this area, this enabling programmers with Addressable. So Dan, I'm going to start with you because I know you've been at this for quite a while yourself. Univision is a fairly new move for you, but I know you've been at other programmers. You've been thinking about this a long time. I'm just curious if you can tell us what you see as the benefits to programmers by bringing this inventory into the marketplace, but also maybe expand on how you see that benefiting brands and agencies as well.
Yeah, and look, I actually think the benefits are fairly well aligned between both of them. I think the reality is when we think about addressability, we think about it as precision, right? Addressability is technology that enables precision. It lets you put an ad where you want, when you want, in front of who you want, right? And it's sort of the highest bar of precision. That precision really unlocks yield on the programmer side of the equation, right? Enabling us to pair literally the right impressions with the right demand, and that can be based on efficacy, it could be based on value exchange. And then likewise on the agency advertiser side, they can use that precision to drive more efficiency and effectiveness in their media spend today. So I think that's kind of the basis in terms of the value for benefit. I mean, there's 1,000,001 downstream benefits as well, probably the biggest of which is cross-platform. This entire industry is wrestling with fragmentation, which is obviously leading towards supply shifts, right? You have less and less core linear supply for the most part, and more digital or DAI enabled supply. Connecting those dots is very difficult, right? So the notion of if you can sort of drag and stretch the technology across to your linear endpoints via ACR and set-top box, all of a sudden now you're playing sort of like-to-like technology where with the right data infrastructure around it, that technology now enables you to really activate in a optimized way across all those modalities. So I would say that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, again, there's a lot of other applications for the technology, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we go.
Yeah, and John, maybe I'll pivot to you. The Forrester report was discussed a little bit earlier in the session, and I know we talked about it when we were prepping for this. There were some key points that were brought out, especially around interoperability and using, providing more scale, providing more inventory. I think Viacom, has done a really good job of working across the industry, has really kind of embraced bringing a lot of inventory into the market here. Could you just give us some details on that and maybe your approach to, how you're also packaging up the inventory and the types of products you're offering in the marketplace?
Yeah, of course. So I would say Viacom, like pre-merger, was very focused on this effort for the last 3 or 4 years. So with every one of our programming agreements that we've made, it's been a priority to introduce addressable enablement as part of our footprint. From a cable side of the house, we're up to 41 million households nationwide active today. So people can buy addressable advertising within the Viacom cable footprint with household level targeting. And then from a CBS side of things, post-merger, they were, going down the path of really enablement from, the creative, split type of, the SASO type of model in terms of allowing a single advertiser to be able to optimize by either an audience or potentially by creative. So what we've done since we've come together is really bring both those efforts together to really, bring a comprehensive addressable plan to the marketplace.
So it sounds like, but in doing that, right, you're helping to ease the sort of transactional complexity of having to go to all these different folks to make an addressable buy. That was a point raised earlier by one of the panelists. Also, I think, it sounds like these numbers you just talked about, I think you said 41 million households, that sort of national scale, being able to get that national reach. So those are all really, important milestones as addressable begins to move forward. Larry, shifting over to you, I know, on the distributor side, MVPD side, this is something you guys have embraced. I'd like to hear, why it's important to you. And then also all the kind of work that's being done to help unify the distributors so that we make it not only easier for the programmers to execute, but obviously so that can then be passed on to brands and agencies as well.
Sure. Similar to Dish, we've been in the addressable business in the local 2 minutes for a number of years. We see the value for marketers, and ultimately, for us to drive more business ourselves, we see the tide rising all boats, right? So by us partnering with programmers and getting more addressable scale in the market, that actually brings more dollars out of the traditional linear business into addressable. And we think that's great for the TV ecosystem at large. And so if the TV ecosystem grows, then we can grow our share of that as well. Television's really always been kind of a cooperative business where multiple companies have had to work together in order to deliver, the powerful medium that it is. And we think addressable TV is just an evolution of that cooperation. And so to that end, we've been spending a lot of time with the other distributors in the marketplace, really trying to bring kind of alignment and understanding in how we're working with programmers, making sure that we're all kind of understanding that workflow, trying to simplify that workflow, and then engaging with the ad decisioning systems like Freewheel and Google to make sure that there's a simple and easy way for them to plug in and interoperate with each of the distributors so that a programmer can literally book a campaign in one place and have it flow out into the broader ecosystem and deliver that scale John was talking about.
Yeah, that's obviously, super important. As I mentioned, I referenced the Forrester piece and a few of the things that really jumped out in that piece that Forrester did when they interviewed, over 500 different brands and agencies, enable the buying of national minutes, which is the topic we're talking about. That ranked either 1, 2, or 3 in importance for 91% of the respondents. So it's obviously, really, really important. And the ability to, have this interoperability across partners and technologies, that one ranked, hit a 92% when we look across the ranking that as 1, 2, or 3 in terms of most important to these respondents. So clearly this topic that we're talking about is very, very important. What do we think are some of the challenges that are still ahead, though, to reach this goal? And Dan, maybe I'll start with you in terms of what you've seen from the programmer side.
How much time do we have left?
Yeah, exactly.
Look, so there are no shortage of challenges, and it is by no means, I think, lost on any one of the three of us, and certainly anyone who's working in this space, just how important it is to keep pursuing this. So I do not want to at all minimize that. This is something that is an industry we need to do. It's what's best for, frankly, to Larry's point, all participants in the ecosystem. So I'm going to preface it with that. I think the challenge that we have right now is, and it's ironic that we're doing this during Upfront Week, we do need to stop a little bit of the grandiose, frankly, bullshit. It's here and everything's at scale. It's not. It is riddled with challenges. I do feel very confident about our ability to start to chip away at those, but there are challenges from a technology standpoint, right? The way that the actual enablement happens via set-top box, via ACR, for broadcast, for cable, for local station affiliate, like there's a big technical component that happens both on the operator side, frankly, as well as the programmer side. If you think about the tech stacks that exist within a typical cable or national broadcast, linear TV company, those tech stacks are not always the most advanced, and they're built around units, not impressions, and they're not connected to operative, and they're not connected to ad servers. So the technical challenge exists everywhere. That's not even the piece that scares me the most, right? The second piece I would say is demand, right? You need to overhaul an entire marketplace. This is a marketplace that, by the way, has been transacting on Nielsen HSEX demos since American Bandstand. We're trying to advance that. I think there's great efforts in audience. You look what John and team have built with Vantage. That's a great offering, and that's growing and scaling. It's still tiny compared to the Nielsen HSEX business that I'm sure Viacom does, and same for every operator, right? So shifting those business models into whatever this hybridized world becomes, that's another big challenge, right? And how do we shift an upfront marketplace, which you could argue that it's legacy, but it's also the most efficient way to transact billions of dollars, right? How do you transition that to be more of this real-time data-enabled ad-served ecosystem? Right? There's a reason why it's been difficult to cram digital into an upfront. And then the third piece, the last point. So the third piece is measurement, we also always forget about that. We're never going to have 100% of our impressions served this way. So you have this Swiss cheese problem. Nielsen's trying to solve it. Again, I'm confident in all three of these buckets, there will be solves. But I do think we all also need to be constantly realistic about what those challenges are and not minimize them, own them, and together solve them. And Larry's heard me say this a million
Yeah, Dan, I was going to just echo your comment about the various systems across both the programmer and the distributors. Virtually every single piece of technology that's been deployed to deliver linear television needs to be unpacked, modified, or upgraded in order to get addressable to scale. And that is not a small undertaking. The good news is, I think every major programmer is investing in that, have built plans, have, run tests, so they understand where the warts are that they need to address, and they're working on it, similar to the operators. And this was kind of my point about, the collaboration. We're all talking about how do we upgrade our systems so that they operate more like digital than they used to. And look, that's not a quick solve, but it's not as far away from being reality as it was 3 years ago, right? Every year we're making progress towards that. And I think, 2022 will be a real turning point for the marketplace. But I would also, to your point about changing the buyer behavior, digital has been around for, 20 years now. And it took 10 years for programmatic to really take hold. And people are like, well, that's how 70% of digital is transacted now, right? So I think addressable is going to be the same thing. It's going to be an evolution. And 10 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, why did we do TV any other way? Like we're doing it addressable, and that's the right thing to be doing.
Some of the earlier sessions today were really focused on reach and reach incrementality. And, I think we all know that addressable can really empower that reach and frequency control. It can help find that incremental reach. I guess, John, asking you here, are there products like reach type products that maybe can be brought to market sooner as we're still working through some of these other challenges? And what are some other, product offerings that Viacom might have in the marketplace that is helping bring folks in, even at this point, where maybe everything is not ready at the kind of scale we'd want, but there's enough pieces maybe in place to start doing some real business today.
Yeah, so actually to echo some of the points that Larry and Dan made, and in terms of just some of the adoption challenges beyond like technical, I think that while I think across the industry, there's a huge emphasis towards bringing, national addressability to scale. Not everyone's exactly at the same, stage of development. So while we have 1 million households, there's others that are testing just now for the first time. So our strategy in terms of like how we've made this inventory actionable from a Vantage perspective is really using it as a complement to our data-driven linear component. So when you think about reach and frequency and how we're really kind of giving our addressable footprint a very specific value prop within what we're offering, is we have developed within our platform what we call a cross-platform optimizer, in which we take the existing audience segment plan that we built for our data-driven linear platform. We score it against the ComScore household footprint based on likelihood to be exposed to that linear campaign. And then we suppress those that are most likely to be exposed, whether it's be the top 15 or top 20%, and then deploy that portion of the audience in our one-to-one footprint or our addressable footprint. And then we're able to measure that incrementality. And we're seeing, pretty strong results that, anywhere from, 15 to 20% of impressions airing there, of driving anywhere from like 15 to 30% lift in unique reach. So it's definitely, from a data-driven linear perspective, it's about predictive models and making bets on where we think we're going to find that audience. Addressable is using the technology to make sure that we're finding those that are less predictable and really those hard to reach viewers in TV.
Yeah, hey, Tim, sorry, if I could just build on that really quick. So Johnny, that makes a ton of sense. And like, I think every network would be smart to follow suit in the early days while scale's building. That's the, I think, path of sort of least resistance to get it stood up. Longer term, once we do have scale, I mean, Tim, think about sequential messaging, think about better frequency control in the linear environment. We've never had that before, right? So, the average frequency is, in my opinion, one of the most dangerous metrics that we've ever built in linear television. It's the one number that probably no one actually had that number of frequency.
Yeah.
Right? The reality is some had 1, some had 102, and the average frequency was 35 over 12 weeks.
Yeah.
It's useless, right? So I do think that's what gets me most excited is the innovation that will come on top of this technology as scale builds. Like I think collectively across all of the media cos and the operators and also the agencies and advertisers, we're gonna do some really cool stuff with this. Like the technology is really powerful. So that's where I get super jazzed about it.
Yeah, and I think we've got like 1 minute. I know this was not enough time for a very big topic, so I'm looking forward to this conversation continuing, hopefully in another forum on another day. But both of you, both Viacom and Univision, have broadcast components as well. And I think one of the things that's exciting to me is that this technology that we're bringing to market not only works for cable networks, which is where addressable has been relegated for the most part on linear TV, but it also works with broadcast. And we've started to deploy that with Viacom CBS, and I certainly hope we're going to be deploying that with Univision as well. So it's not only opening up more inventory in those networks that we have today, but it's opening it up in new and exciting networks, the broadcast networks. So I think with that, we're going to get the hook.
Absolutely agree, though. That's a great point.
Yes, I'm sorry. I hate pulling you guys off stage, especially I know it's like a lot of material to go through in a short amount of time, but I think you did a great job at educating our community and sharing your expertise and insight. So Dan, Larry, John, Tim, thank you so much. We loved having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for the time.
Thank you guys.
All right, and I think we are winding down for our last session of today. We have Adam Gerber, the president of global media at Essence. We have Kevin Arix, the senior vice president at Dish Media. We're going to be talking pretty high level about the future of TV. So let's bring them on, and we will wrap up the day on reimagining TV. I see John coming in. I see, Adam coming in. I see Kevin coming in, so that's great. How you doing, Adam? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Welcome.
Great. No one sent me the background. You're going to have to stare at my
I know.
Syracuse memorabilia.
There are worse things, I think, than your alma mater memorabilia to showcase. Or your big Syracuse guy, I guess.
Townie, not alma
nice.
mater. I'm the worst kind of fan.
I mean, in their eyes, you're the best kind of fan. So it's all about perspective, I think, right?
That's true. That's true.
All right, and there's Kevin joining us. How you doing? Welcome.
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm good. I know we don't have a ton of time, so I don't want to waste any more of it. Kevin, the stage is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate the facilitation over the course of the afternoon. We are batting cleanup, Adam and I, and I'm super excited to have him as a guest. When we look at all the different topics that have been covered today, Adam and I are going to focus on, and we're in particular going to focus in on Adam's point of view on the future of TV, which is the overall topic. So Adam, I know you probably need no introduction, but why don't we start with, I will also add that I've known Adam for a couple of decades now.
Way too long.
I know. But one thing that I know we will get is the straight answer and the truth today. So that's a great way to wrap the session. So Adam, quick intro and purview and core areas of focus today for you.
Sure. I'm running global investment for Essence, which is one of Group M's 4 global media networks. Our clients globally are Google on the digital side, Airbnb full service. We have clients that span from British Telecom in EMEA to Target and NBC Universal here in domestically, and clients like Flipkart in India and APAC. So have a pretty wide purview on the types of clients and different categories that are investing, not only here in the US, but across the world.
Awesome. Thank you. I also think it's worth noting that, again, not to date ourselves, but both Adam and I spent over a decade in the digital business. And I know Adam started on the planning side. I started on the linear television side. So we both have an interesting sort of cycle that we've seen where we started in television and then participated in the early days of digital, and now Adam's role is obviously broader, but in my role overseeing Dish Media back in television, and I think it's such an interesting time now because we are truly seeing the intersection of linear TV and digital video, or digital, however you want to call it, but it is all coming together, albeit not perfectly, but moving in the right direction. So. Adam, I know we discussed earlier the topics that we had today. Lots of interesting ones, ranging from addressable television, addressable enablement of programmers, identity, reach incrementality, and the list goes on. But before we talk specific topics, I'd love to get your take on what the macro trends are in the television space that you're seeing today, and that you're seeing sort of shaping and staying with us over the next 2 to 3 years.
Sure. I mean, look, at the highest level, and not to freak anyone out, and I apologize because I wasn't able to spend the whole day listening to the panels. So I'm hoping a lot of these topics were already covered, and that everyone was in agreement to the fact that, look, the macro trends are people are gravitating to non-ad supported platforms. They are increasingly defining what a quote unquote TV viewing experience is very differently than what we've historically defined it as. It's not just a 30 or 60-minute show. The application of data into the business is, and the activation process, how we execute, is increasingly one of the more important things that we can do. I think, Dan, I did catch the last tail end of the last panel, and I'm a fan of Dan, and I think his quote, "The worst thing this industry ever did was invent average frequency as a metric in the TV side," is absolutely appropriate. If you look at average frequency in relation to an actual frequency distribution chart of a TV campaign, it's like turning the light on and realizing that you're in a really scary place.
Well, we don't want to be in a scary place, but I think one of the main reasons behind today's sessions was really to educate and enlighten all the different topics that we collectively need to solve for, and collectively is across supply side, demand side, measurement, data, et cetera. Tell us from your point of view, Adam, where you sit, like what's happening with the different players within television, and we've had this conversation before, but and again, I think it's super valuable for the audience to hear around. You care less about how the consumer is viewing and more about how you can reach them. Tell us about sort of how these what were sort of I would say specifically defined silos of TV consumption are now forced to connect, and what does that mean?
I mean, look, I think it's the biggest thing confronting the industry over the short term, over the next 6 to 12 months, because it's going to inform and essentially define how our infrastructure is built, how our measurement tools are evolved, and how on the buy side we approach the marketplace. And kind of the theme that I'm talking about here is, if we keep talking about things in separate silos, linear TV, addressable MVPD, digital video, connected TV and OTT, we're going to fail. We will fail if we keep everything defined in channels like that, because that's not how people watch. People go home and decide to watch a show. How it gets to them is irrelevant, or they choose to engage with video content. And we need to have an environment. We need an infrastructure environment. We need a measurement capability, and we need planning tools and implementation tools that allow us to stitch all of those different video experiences together holistically, so that advertisers can plan and buy in an effective way, and quite honestly, so that sellers can make their experiences better. They need to, if we can help through a better model, sellers and programmers reduce the ad load in their inventory, that's good for the end user. Now, notice I didn't say anything about price, because we need to rethink the pricing model as part of that and move from pricing to value.
Yep. I think that is that is part and parcel of a shift like that. What you kind of touched on it, but could you expand a little bit further on what you think the TV buying world looks like in that in an era where it doesn't matter if it's linear, CTV, or digital. It's just how you can put your message, the right message, in front of the right audience. Tell us what you think the TV buying model looks like there.
I mean, I think it has to become much more fluid. It has to become driven much more by kind of near real-time insights into what audiences have been exposed and haven't been exposed, and where they're consuming content. And I think that's one of the biggest underlying challenges that we have. We're literally sitting in the upfront week right now, where billions of dollars get committed to, you know, very specific silos of inventory or programmers, and that locks people into how their inventory falls through the year. And I get that there needs to be some clear visibility on the sell side into kind of what inventory has been purchased and what inventory hasn't been purchased. But we're still operating in a very old traditional model that doesn't allow us to take advantage of the capabilities that exist in an impression-based world, which are data-driven, real-time decisioned, et cetera. And in that world, you know, the world that I see in the future, there'll be a lot more decisioning from the buy side or decisioning in the middle around campaign activity, so that campaigns are optimized to deliver the highest level of reach and the lowest frequency against heavy viewers. And, you know, God forbid we ever talk about business results as a metric, but those are all things that I think are coming, and they have to come if ad-supported video wants to continue to be healthy.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of things that we could unpack and go deeper on, but we'll save that for another day. Switching gears a little bit, our opening panel today was on programmatic technology, and you know, one of the things that you just mentioned was decisioning. And is it supply side? Is it demand side? Is it in the middle? You know, both sides have, I think both sides have valid points for decisioning to take place, where, you know, whether again supply or demand. When we look at programmatic technology, and I would define it as any level of automation or any use of technology that automates one of the three stages of media planning, buying, or reporting / measurement. What's your take on where programmatic goes with television, and where it is today, and where you think it goes?
It's a loaded question to end with. I think of the TV kind of landscape today kind of on three layers, right? I think that there's a unit-based world that is kind of static, and I can't affect it, right? Then there's this middle layer, which is addressable within the traditional linear environment, and that actually happens on two levels. It happens through, you know, the initial trials that have been announced over the last 12 months by the national networks to do national addressable overlays into portions of their distribution where they have the ability to do that. And then you have the third layer, which is kind of, or the third level, which is kind of true digital environments that are impression-based, data informed. All three of those things have to be brought together. And programmatic, as I define it, you know, I define it very specifically. Programmatic to me is where the buy side can make the decision based on an informed view of the overall campaign. If I'm not able to do that from my side, it's not really programmatic to me.
Okay, so that's another question on programmatic guarantee for another.
It's automated. I mean, it's automated. I mean, anything other than that is just automation of an existing model.
Yep.
Programmatic to me, I look at everything from a campaign perspective. If I can't decision at a campaign level, there's not much value to move on to platforms.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Programmatic guarantee is automation of the IO process. I'll give you that. Okay, on the last question, because I know you have a hard stop. Upfront, we're wrapping up Upfront week. Well, is this year going to be back to the future, or are the lessons that the market learned last year going to be applied going forward? That is a loaded question.
What lessons did we learn last year? I don't think
Flexibility, some things.
We took very small steps towards the a better model, but the reality is the upfront still was the upfront last year. It just moved at a snail's pace. I think that for good reason. Everyone had a lot of uncertainty last year. I'm surprised at how resilient the marketplace was and how well everyone came through it. I think both the sell side and the buy side partnered together to make the best out of a very difficult situation. But I think moving forward, we are now back to reality, which is a reality of supply and demand. And the reality is that linear ratings are eroding. Advertiser, the economy is going to grow at 6% in the back half of the year. We're expecting there will be demand in the marketplace for linear TV. And I'm hopeful that the marketplace on the buy side starts to recognize that we need to find alternative supply and to diversify how we invest against, especially those under 50 who are not consuming traditional linear TV the way that they used to.
Adam, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Always good to have your insights. So thanks again. David, before I hand it back over to you, just thanks again to Brand Innovators for framing this up for us. And one message I'd like to leave is we tried not to focus today on Dish Media and what we're doing, but more about the issues in advanced television and trying to give everybody the real view as to what's happening and why we care about it so much. So thanks to everybody from Dish and all the guests that joined us. So cheers.
Thank you, Adam. For sharing with us. I know that was a quick one, but super insightful. We got to have you back, I think, for a more robust conversation and diving into some of these topics you touched on. And Kevin, to your point, it's been our pleasure, working with you guys at Dish and bringing this to life. It is a fascinating space for all the the innovation on the content side and the streaming side that the viewers see in their home. And we know that it's all happening on the business side too, and on the technology side too, to kind of evolve this category. So I'm glad that we could spend this day diving into some of these big topics. Like we said, there's so much more that we can go into. So I'm sure there's a part two that we could already plan, but this was great. Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody out there in YouTube land and Zoom land for tuning in and sticking with us. And we hope to see you back tomorrow. We have an international live cast in our Influencer Marketing Summit. So we'll see you guys there, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Kevin. Take care.
Yep.
Bye, David.
Take care, everyone. This was a fantastic program. Again, I hope a lot of you tune in, join us tomorrow for our international live cast at 8 a.m. Eastern and our Influencer Marketing Summit kicking off at noon Eastern. So